Chapter 151, Byakuya and the Broken World. Although there were some things on top of the pyramid, they were not very apparent. On the contrary, the world below gave Dragon a strange feeling at a glance. It was like a massive city, with concentric circles extending towards the depths of the underground pits, giving an overall sense of a monumental burial ground. The buildings inside varied in style, as if they had endured countless ages of erosion. Numerous eras intertwined in this place, forming buildings with styles from different periods. The farther down, the better preserved the buildings became. The farther up, the more they collapsed, filled with the decay and desolation brought by time. At the very bottom, there seemed to be a mysterious bronze door. The door looked somewhat indistinct, extremely ethereal, covered with countless mysterious patterns, giving an indescribable sense of silence and depth. In this darkness, a pale force surged, rising and falling like a river flowing through this dark world. The massive stone pillars supporting the pyramid exuded a strange majesty, engraved with images resembling demons, all staring at the entrance, as if they wanted to burst out. Dragon suddenly felt as if he were suffocating because he sensed that he had entered what seemed to be a realm not meant for humans. The world above was unclear, and the world below was clear. Dragon didn't know where Cobra was at this moment. The world was exceptionally quiet, with no sound from the outside reaching inside. I should ask Cobra where he is first. Dragon felt a bit miscalculated, but he had already knocked those people unconscious, and now he couldn't wake them up again. After all, he didn't know the layout inside the pyramid. Anyway, let's go down first. Compared to the dark and deep unknown above, the world below was much clearer. At least there were traces of a civilized city, so Dragon was about to step forward when suddenly his hair stood on end. He had felt an extremely strong killing intent the moment he entered, and now it made him feel as if he had died. A lethal force, like a shadow, seemed to be able to pierce his heart at any moment. In front of him, a cherry-colored long sword appeared, plunged into the ground. Its colors were brilliant like a flower, noble and elegant yet mixed with a killing intent, as if announcing that moving forward would result in being cut by the sword. Who? Dragon struggled to lift his head, only to find that at some point, a person had appeared above. He wore a black inner garment and draped a white feather over it. He was extremely handsome, with long hair, light purple eyes, and a strange ornament on his head that wrapped a bunch of hair in a cylindrical decoration, with silver-white windflower chiffon around his neck. His face carried an indifferent and cold expression, a man incompatible with the darkness. A strong pressure emanated from him, as if it were Conqueror's haki. In the next moment, he disappeared. Dragon's eyes widened because, at that moment, the man's figure had appeared behind him. "You're a bit slow to react." He was behind Dragon, speaking casually. What had he just done? Dragon couldn't see his movements clearly, but he knew that at that moment, the man had swung a blade at him. The answer was puff. In an instant, a vivid blood flower burst from his chest, intense pain spreading from his chest to every corner of his body. The pain quickly transformed into an equal numbness. Consciousness seemed to be dissipating. So terrifying. What kind of speed was that just now? Who was this person? Why was he so strong? Cobra entered the pyramid for him? Dragon's brain was turning because now, besides his brain, everything else couldn't move. With the corner of his eye, he saw the man in white looking at him indifferently, as if he didn't care at all. Wait. Please wait. Lord Byakuya. Suddenly, Cobra's voice came from underground. However, the man named Byakuya still kept his indifferent gaze on Dragon. I don't remember allowing the Nefertari family to bring outsiders into the Senkaimon. Violating the contract is equivalent to betrayal. I think you should be aware of this. Byakuya said calmly. He is my bodyguard. I should be worried about me taking too long this time, and that's why he violated my orders to enter. Cobra quickly ran out from underground at this time, panting as he climbed the spiral staircase-like path to the surface. After seeing Dragon lying on the ground, Cobra frowned. You should be grateful you didn't step into the inverted pyramid, or you would have died. The Shinigami adheres to rules and contracts. Cobra sighed and then lifted Dragon's body, walking towards the exit. Thank you. Dragon said weakly. Although Cobra said so, there was still some selfishness in his actions. These guards might have a way to contact him, although they might not be able to make decisions. While looking for Cobra, Dragon also wanted to see what mysteries were inside the inverted pyramid. Unexpectedly, he almost lost his life. Chapter 152, Take Action. But now it's better to inform Cobra about the upcoming arrival of Atrox, and the remaining matters can be investigated slowly. In any case, this demon Atrox is coming to Alabasta. Please make sure to notify the king to send out the army to evacuate the civilians along the way. It's best to evacuate everyone from the south to the north. Cobra was shocked, and the anger he had just had disappeared in an instant. Atrox. Who hasn't heard of this name by now? He caused a lot of casualties on the seas of the New World, and the Battle of Edwar eliminated more than half of the pirate forces. Countless lives might have been lost at his hands. Such a demon is coming to Alabasta. Fear surged in Cobra's heart. He almost had no time to confirm the authenticity of this news, but immediately decided to inform the king. In the inverted pyramid, there are descendants of Shinigami. Seek their help. On the other side, on the Roger's ship, heading towards the area where Atrox was located, Rajan was still talking to Roger. At the moment, there weren't many members of Roger's pirate crew on the ship. There were only Roger, Rayleigh, Yozu, and an unnamed person. Whitebeard was also here. It was time to deal with Atrox, so it was essential to bring him over. Descendants of Shinigami. Hearing another unfamiliar term, Roger frowned. Yes, if we have to say there's something that has been passed down from our time until now, the gatekeepers of hell would be one of them, Rajan said calmly. They seem to have some kind of agreement with the current royal family. With the influence of the royal family in the mortal world, they've successfully concealed the entrance to hell, and few people in this world know where the entrance to hell is. Otherwise, there would be many demons and demon hunters wanting to enter it, open some kind of seal, or seek power from there. This so-called royal family is, of course, the Nefertari family. Alabasta is quite famous, and Roger had heard of it. Since the entrance to hell is in Alabasta, it's only natural that the Nefertari family, who made a pact with the descendants of Shinigami, is responsible for it. However, in reality, this agreement was fabricated. It was just the use of Maki's ability to alter the memories of the Nefertari family. Maki's clone was indeed not that powerful, but her functional capabilities were incredibly strong, almost surpassing Source-Eye's core. Her importance even exceeded that of Atrox. They exist between the mortal world and hell, in a place known as the Boundary. They are in charge of not letting creatures from hell leave through the entrance. However, they are not responsible for placing demons from the outside into hell. Moreover, we're not trying to put Atrox on the surface of hell, but to place him in the Boundary where he exists. Rajan explained. The Boundary is where the descendants of Shinigami reside. Without their permission, placing Atrox there won't be so easy. Roger thought for a moment and directly said to Rajan, shouldn't this kind of thing be handled by you guys? We have nothing to do with the descendants of Shinigami, and besides, I want to lure Atrox to Alabasta. I don't have time to meet the descendant of that Shinigami. What you say makes sense. Rajan also said, I will inform the headquarters about this matter. Alright, we're almost there. Suddenly, the unnamed person spoke, it's time to separate. They were currently in the waters near Dressrosa because Atrox's direction of advance was here. After causing extensive destruction in the depths of the New World, he began advancing towards the first half of the Grand Line. This was also why the world government was urging Maki so much, as Atrox had set his sights on them. No one knew when the Battle of Edwar would reappear on the world government's territory. To bring Atrox to Alabasta, of course, they couldn't dispatch the entire crew. Although they were all experts, having more people would only cause more trouble. So they left only Roger and the unnamed person behind to wait for Atrox to come. The others went directly to Alabasta to prepare for the final battle. Roger was the strongest, and the unnamed person had unparalleled agility. Only they two had the ability to lure Atrox to Alabasta. The others would not have much use here. Well then, I'm leaving. Roger and the unnamed person disappeared on the ship. Rajan also said, I will set out with the Marines to Alabasta. We'll meet again in that country. After all, Rajan was a member of the world government, and being with them all the time might not be a good idea. The others didn't care. They weren't particularly fond of the Blackbeard's admiral in the first place. After the action officially started, Cobra had already conveyed the news to the king on Alabasta. At this moment, Cobra was with the Marines, or more precisely, with Cap, Dragon, and Crane. Dragon was lying on the bed, and Crane was helping him bandage his wounds. At this moment, there weren't many people in Yuba. After the guards of Cobra's escort team woke up, he ordered them to evacuate the civilians. Sorry for making you worry about the citizens of our country to the point of getting severely injured. Cobra sincerely apologized. Then he said again, Lord Byakuya is someone who values rules, so he dislikes others violating contracts. At that time, Dragon must have wanted to go to the boundary, which led to his attack. Lord Byakuya. Cap said somewhat displeased, aren't you the prince of this country? Why are there other lords? His son was severely injured, and he naturally felt upset. However, he was well aware of his son's strength. Although Dragon was still very young at only 13 or 14, his strength was quite formidable. Especially after eating the devil fruit, his strength surpassed even a vice-admiral. Kong had even asked him if he wanted Dragon to join the world government's large recruitment to become a new admiral. Cap neither agreed nor disagreed, just saying that it depended on Dragon's own thoughts. In other words, although Dragon was still very young, he was already a formidable expert in the Marines. Yet, he was injured to this extent by the Lord Byakuya, a prince of another country? Who exactly was this Byakuya, who Cobra, a prince, respected so much? Chapter 153, Alabastus Contract with the God of Death. Faced with Cap's questioning, Cobra fell silent. As a prince of a nation, Cobra could be ignored by Cap and his group, but he couldn't be forced. Cobra couldn't force them to do anything just by not speaking. Demon Atrox will be coming to this country next, so I hope your highness can provide some assistance, Crane said in a deep voice. The secrets within the inverted pyramid, we do not intentionally pry into them, but it may involve a battle against the demon lord. This battle, if not handled properly, might lead to the destruction of the entire country. Her words struck Cobra's heart. Indeed, everyone now knew how powerful Atrox was. The enormous island where Jartsburg was located was destroyed by Atrox. Although the area of Jartsburg is far smaller than Alabasta, the island it is on is almost as large as Alabasta. If that island was destroyed, what chance did Alabasta have to survive? Once war breaks out, even if civilians are evacuated, it is highly likely to result in widespread devastation. As if struggling with some inner conflict, Cobra took a deep breath and slowly began to speak of the history to the three. I actually don't know a lot of things because the information about the inverted pyramid has been passed down orally by generations of kings and hasn't been recorded in any written documents. He spoke with a solemn tone, as if under immense psychological pressure. And due to some accidents, the information about the inverted pyramid was lost for some time. Even when it was rediscovered, much had been lost, so what I'm saying may not be entirely accurate. Crane nodded in understanding. Alabasta has a history of thousands of years, but the Nefertari family has only had 11 generations, even counting Cobra, the future king, it's only the 12th generation. Not to mention thousands of years ago, even 800 years ago is a bit forced. So, there must have been a period of royal power turmoil halfway through, and after that turmoil, some of the previous traditions were lost, which is quite normal. Looking at Dragon lying on the bed, Cobra spoke with a slightly nostalgic tone. Things go back to thousands of years ago when Cassila was the one who first conquered Alabasta. Cassila was the one who initially conquered Alabasta. Legend has it that he was able to conquer this vast country because he made a pact with the Shinigami. Shinigami. It sounded like a powerful deity. Cassila, who made a pact with the Shinigami, gained unparalleled strength and built many churches and pyramids to please the gods, hoping to obtain eternal life. But one day, he eventually died. Cobra continued in a low voice, revealing the unknown history. In legend, he didn't actually die but his soul entered the world of the Shinigami, becoming a guard of the Shinigami. Later, all the successive kings were the same. They built tombs beneath the pyramid, within the range of the inverted pyramid, because after their deaths, their souls would return to the tombs for resurrection. The Nefertari family is no exception. We built tombs in Aluberna for our physical bodies and tombs within the inverted pyramid for our souls. I just went to the inverted pyramid to help my father build the place where his soul will reside in the future. He seemed completely unreserved about his father's death. Indeed, in their minds, death was not a big deal because they would continue to live in the world of the Shinigami after death. However, in reality, most of this pyramid was created by Sorsai himself. Brainwashing is straightforward, as it happens at the level of consciousness. But creating ruins on a material level is challenging. This pyramid is different from the Ascension Altar. The Ascension Altar isn't large, and with their abilities, they could easily create one. But this pyramid is like a city, and it needs to extend downward. It's not something that can be done casually. Maki Maki controlled a large number of animals and, with the power of the soul fruit, generated many homies. Coupled with Sorsai's deployment of many high-end combat forces, only then could they complete such a pyramid in a relatively short time. Now Sorsai had the ability to deceive a dragon with a simple act. On a conscious level, he could directly tamper, and on a material level, he could make quick modifications. This was all thanks to having Maki Maki as a clone. And what we need to do is to conceal this inverted pyramid, guard it for generations, and never disturb the peace of the souls of the previous kings returning to the inverted pyramid. So when Dragon wanted to go to the inverted pyramid, Byakuya appeared because that didn't comply with our covenant with the Shinigami. So, who exactly is Suzuki Aizen? Dragon couldn't help but ask at this point. As soon as the words Suzuki Aizen were mentioned, the pain in his chest would faintly intensify. That guy was too powerful. Cobra also had some doubts and said, possibly, he's the gatekeeper of hell, the representative of the Shinigami. I've only seen him twice. One of those times was when he severely injured Dragon. Crane was about to say something more, but at this moment, she suddenly heard the den mushi ringing again. She glanced at Cap, Cobra, and Dragon, and none of them were speaking. Crane picked up the den mushi, and it instantly turned into an empty appearance, with empty sounds coming from inside. The Blackbeard pirates are already on their way to Alabasta. Shortly after they arrive, Aatrox should also arrive. Maki Maki contacted me earlier and told me that there are descendants of Shinigami in Alabasta, and to seal Aatrox, we need their help. Descendants of Shinigami. At this moment, they thought of that Suzuki Aizen. The Blackbeard pirates knew this information? Crane looked at Cobra and found his brows furrowed. She spoke into the empty den mushi, we've already encountered that descendant of Shinigami. Dragon was injured by him. What? The empty den mushi exclaimed in surprise. You've already met him? Yes, although not a conventional meeting, Crane replied. But based on the previous situation, it won't be easy to get him to help. He appeared and instantly severely injured Dragon, and in more than 10 years, even a prince had only seen him twice. Such a person would not be easy to communicate with. The gatekeeper of hell has the authority over the inverted pyramid. You only need to borrow this authority, and you can successfully seal Aatrox in the end. Chapter 154, Re-entering the Pyramid, the Change and Advancement of Civilization. K. Spoke at the Marine Headquarters, anyway, try your best. If it really doesn't work, wait until the Blackbeard pirates arrive and let them negotiate. Yes, we will try, Crane nodded. After that, this communication ended. Crane looked out of the window, and the streets that were once filled with people had become extremely deserted. The king informed the entire population of Alabasta through the communication devices spread throughout the country about Aatrox's impending arrival. Massive armies were organized to evacuate civilians in the south. Some left Alabasta by ship directly, while others were taken by the military and navy to the north. The entire country was now in chaos, and the unusual silence here was quite abnormal. People didn't know whether they could defeat Aatrox, and in reality, they themselves didn't know either. Although they claimed to be fully prepared, is there really such a thing as complete preparation in this world? Moreover, even with all preparations, Aatrox's power was still despair-inducing. Many of them had never faced Aatrox directly because not many who faced him survived. This lack of first-hand experience with Aatrox led to two factions. One believed Aatrox wasn't as powerful as rumored, while the other believed Aatrox was much stronger than the legends. And now, it was evident that these people were leaning towards the idea that Aatrox was even more formidable. Even Cap, who had faced the Demon Lord himself, found it hard to accurately describe how powerful he really was. Thinking about it carefully, back then, they faced Aatrox with him, Sengoku, Kizaru, and many others from Roger's pirate crew. While it may not be considered ancient and unprecedented, the combined strength was likely not much lower than the current gathering of these individuals. The only variables were Roger and Maki Maki. Back then, Roger was not as powerful as he is now, and Maki Maki has always been mysterious. When she first acted in Jartsburg, she astonished everyone, and no one knew what kind of power she would display this time. Let me communicate with Suzuki Aizen. Cobra volunteered. Actually, Cobra had no idea that Aatrox was intentionally lured by their plan. He thought Aatrox was heading to Alabasta, and the Marines got the news in advance to intercept him. so, he felt that he should contribute for the sake of Alabasta. I'll go with you, Dragon said from the bed. Why are you pushing yourself? Cap frowned. Just stay here honestly. No, I want to go, Dragon said stubbornly. Why did he have to go? In fact, he couldn't explain it himself. Perhaps he just wanted to see that Sasuke Aizen, who severely injured him, clearly and remember him completely. Or maybe it was something he saw in the pyramid earlier that he wanted to see more clearly. He always felt that this event was not so simple. As long as you don't enter the range of the inverted pyramid, it won't be considered a violation of the agreement, Cobra said. But your injuries? No problem, Dragon said softly. As long as I can move, it's fine. I'm not going for revenge. Okay, Cobra nodded and didn't say anything more. Cap looked at Dragon's stubborn appearance, also didn't say anything more. He didn't try to dissuade, as everyone in his family was like this, and he had gotten used to it. With only one arm left, what could he do now? There was only the ability to fight against Aatrox. I'll go to the Holy River. Wait for the Blackbeard pirates and Asta to arrive, Crane said to Cap. Now it's just me again. Cap said indifferently. You guys go, I'll be here eating my donuts and waiting for your news. Dragon struggled to stand up, and the wound tore, causing intense pain, but he forced himself to endure it. Cobra looked at him with some worry, but Dragon indicated that everything was fine. In the end, Cobra could only lead him to the pyramid. Leaving the inn where the owner had already left, the two once again arrived in front of the pyramid. This enormous pyramid was quite eerie because the entrance had disappeared. When Dragon left earlier, he didn't see it clearly due to his severe injuries, but now he noticed that the entrance he used before was no longer there. However, after Cobra walked over, a strange force generated in front of the pyramid, as if ripples appeared on the water surface, and a door reappeared. Could only members of the Nefertari family open the pyramid's door? No wonder they were confident enough to build a small town around the pyramid. Others simply couldn't enter. Thinking about it, Dragon followed Cobra back into the pyramid. The pyramid remained the same as before, dark upwards and bright downwards. However, this time, Dragon no longer wanted to go down because below was the range of the inverted pyramid, entering which would lead to the path of death. This time, he mainly wanted to observe the world from a parallel perspective. In the center, it was empty because there needed to be a spiral staircase leading downward. But from the entrance to the other end, there was something like a bridge, and there were many pillars around. What is this? He suddenly pointed at something and asked Cobra. Following his gaze, Cobra found he was referring to the murals on the pyramid. It was a completely parallel mural on the walls, encircling the entire pyramid. This pyramid has 3 layers. The inverted pyramid below leads to the underworld, the pyramid above leads to heaven, and the central layer represents the human world. This is symbolic and doesn't actually mean there is heaven above. At least, there is definitely no heaven above, Cobra said with a smile. However, Dragon stared at these murals, and a storm surged in his heart. If these murals were connected and viewed together, they depicted a world he had never thought of before. Initially, it was a primitive world similar to slavery, where people contributed without any freedom. Then came the emergence of rough political power, people gradually putting on the cloak of civilization, and slavery was dissolved but appeared in a different form in the world. Although it was quite dark, and Dragon couldn't see it very clearly, he could vaguely see that these murals, when connected, portrayed the progression of various civilizations. The oppressed subjects changed from slaves to farmers, then to workers, and so on. And until the end, Dragon looked over and found nothing. He faintly sensed that it was a very close to great civilization society, but there was nothing there. What are you looking at? Suddenly, Sasuke Aizen appeared. Chapter 155, Dragon's Thoughts. Just like a ghost suddenly appearing behind him, Dragon turned around and saw the cold face of Sasuke Aizen. It was like a dead person, without any emotional fluctuations. But then again, being the descendant of a Shinigami, it's not like they were originally living beings, right? A strange thought suddenly appeared in Dragon's mind. What are those murals? Dragon couldn't help but ask. It's none of your concern, Aizen calmly said. Coming here again, you're not here to build a tomb for your father, are you? He said this to Cobra. He didn't shy away from such vocabulary. In his presence, there was no distinction between life and death. Therefore, building a tomb and building a house were the same. Yes, I came with another request this time, Cobra said nervously, explaining the situation regarding Aatrox. In front of Aizen, even a prince was somewhat restrained because Aizen exuded a noble aura that even the king found somewhat lacking. Sealing the Demon Lord. When Aizen heard that they wanted to seal Aatrox, there was a slight emotional fluctuation in him, and then his figure disappeared. If you can do that, then I will naturally make a move at the end. He vanished without a trace. This time, Dragon was observing attentively, but still couldn't see how Aizen left. And then the ground beneath them seemed to ripple, and in the next moment, they appeared outside the pyramid. The entire pyramid was Gyako created by Maki Maki, and the ground carrying them away was a basic operation for her. Aizen floated above, and after they disappeared, a green pyramid appeared in his hand. Aizen was indeed very powerful, but saying that he could instantly kill Dragon was a bit of a stretch. However, with this pyramid, he could easily accomplish that. This was a portable pyramid extracted from the million-level items he got earlier. It could directly stimulate a person's potential. Aizen had incorporated it into his soul, allowing him to reach an extremely powerful state. This portable pyramid's potential stimulation varied from person to person. Obviously, Aizen was a Shinigami with great potential. After returning from the Soul King Palace, he directly underwent a significant upgrade. The improvement brought by this pyramid might even surpass the wave of upgrades at the Soul King Palace. That's why it was called a million-level gacha after advanced shopping. Items were much stronger than characters at the same level. In a situation of the same level, items were much stronger than characters, and this portable pyramid's effects were even expected to surpass the limits of this world. In other words, it might be stronger than Aatrox, who was currently within the world's limit. The problem was that the pyramid could only amplify one aspect, which meant it only amplified what was needed at the moment, not the overall strength and certainly not a constant boost. Even so, Aizen was already quite satisfied. He was in this dark pyramid, quietly waiting for the impending battle. Now that Source 1 had developed well enough, after this, there was no need to rush for emotional values with various urgent matters. It was only necessary to proceed step by step. Outside the pyramid, compared to the dark and oppressive world inside, the outside world was where humans should live. However, Dragon was now silent because he had been thinking about the murals. He didn't know why, but he felt that the various records in those murals were interesting, especially the changes in society depicted inside. It made him feel like this was a kind of truth. Yes, the world shouldn't be like this. He shook his head quickly, temporarily getting rid of these miscellaneous thoughts. It wasn't the time to think about these things. It was better to seal Aatrox first, remove the threat of the demon from this world, and then think about it. In the face of demons, regardless of internal differences among humans, at least they were still humans. Just like his old man, Cap, who was now joining forces with pirates to deal with Aatrox. Although it should have been the work of the Blackbeard pirates. But everyone knew that Aatrox was a threat to humanity. In this situation, letting only the Blackbeard pirates handle it would be a foolish idea. Humans shouldn't engage in meaningless internal conflicts when facing demons. Of course, this was just his opinion. In reality, there were still some who wanted to use demons to do things advantageous to themselves. And while Dragon was lost in his thoughts, time passed bit by bit. The marine reinforcements arrived. Among them was only one admiral, Aokiji. Along with him were Maki Maki and Raijin from the Blackbeard pirates, and the majority of the world government's forces gathered here. Chapter 156, Navy, Pirates, and Black Order gather. Zifa did not arrive because with the Blackbeard pirates and the Marines mobilizing, some forces had to be left behind in Marie Joyce. Zifa and K could only stay at the headquarters. The same applied to Sengoku, with the Blackbeard pirates Admiral and Raijin in action, they needed an admiral to stay behind. Besides, Sengoku had to undergo psychic training, and until the training was complete, he couldn't leave for an extended period. This was true for admirals, and even more so for fleet admirals. After becoming a fleet admiral, many things became obligatory. While as an admiral, you had some freedom and flexibility, being a fleet admiral meant carrying the heavy pressure, making it difficult to leave the headquarters for long periods. For instance, if it weren't for dealing with Aatrox, even Maki Maki wouldn't easily leave the Blackbeard pirates' headquarters. It was part of the responsibilities. At the downstream of the St. Dory River, watching the arrival of the Marine Fleet, Boa Hancock also felt a bit sentimental. When did the world government need to mobilize such a large force all at once? In the past, the Marines were already the rulers of the sea. No matter how formidable the pirates were, upon hearing the name of the Marines, they would run away. However, now the Marines had fallen to the point of joining forces with another faction and even had to rely on the power of pirates. It was truly absurd. Vice Admiral Hancock. After the fleet reached the shore, Marines ran out, and Admiral Aokiji walked to Hancock's front. Rank-wise, Aokiji was an admiral, while Hancock was a vice admiral. Aokiji's rank was higher than Hancock's. However, Vice Admiral Hancock was a contemporary of Carp, Sengoku, and Zifa. So, Aokiji respected her. Where are the Blackbeard pirates? Hancock glanced behind Aokiji and didn't see the Blackbeard pirates. She couldn't help but ask. The Roger pirates have also arrived. I was afraid they might do their pirate duties during the chaos, so I asked the Blackbeard pirates to monitor them. Aokiji said. Pirate duties meant looting, killing, and plundering. Pirates, after all, had to be guarded against. However, now that it was a cooperative relationship, defense was necessary, but letting the Marines handle it would be too sensitive. The Blackbeard pirates didn't have this problem. After all, this collaboration was initiated by them. Although Aokiji was young, he was meticulous and considerate. It was indeed a good choice to hand over the position of Fleet Admiral to him. Hancock nodded in her heart. Marine admirals couldn't rely on strength alone. After Aokiji finished speaking, he shouted to the Marines brought along, assist the army of the Alabasta Kingdom in evacuating civilians. For those who want to leave, use the warships to take them to other islands. Facing Atrox, numerical advantage was useless. So, when he brought these Marines, it wasn't initially to deal with Atrox. It was merely a prelude to clear the battlefield. Aokiji's orders were passed down, and the Marines began to act. Among them, there were even some vice admirals. However, these vice admirals were different from Hancock and Carp, and certainly incomparable to the vice admiral like Carp, who had chased the 7 warlords of the sea, Doflamingo, all the way. It wasn't something ordinary vice admirals could compare to. Let's go to Juba first. Carp is still waiting there. After only Hancock and Aokiji remained, Hancock led Aokiji towards Juba. At the same time, she said, is Maki Maki also on the pirate side? Regarding Maki Maki, their old friends had similar views. What Carp, Sengoku, and Zifa had thought in the beginning, they still thought the same way. So, Hancock was somewhat cautious of her. No, she said she was going to the pyramid to communicate with the descendants of the Shinigami, so she left halfway here. Hancock frowned. This Maki Maki disappeared mysteriously again, just like she did in the Jartsburg Kingdom. Back then, in the Jartsburg Kingdom, even though Maki Maki had arrived early, she only made a move at the end, resulting in heavy casualties among the frontliners. Although she did indeed reverse the situation, repelling Atrox, her approach still left a sense of unease. And now it's the same. This gave a bad premonition. However, if she could bring good results, then they could only accept it. Hancock and Aokiji quickly rushed towards Juba. Behind them, after the Marine fleet arrived, Roger's pirate ship also docked nearby. Follow behind the Marine Admiral all the way, making it look like we are chasing after the Marines. Jabba leaned on the railing, speaking somewhat recklessly. After sailing for so many years, it's the first time we've had such an experience. Gililila, Whitebeard also laughed. Cooperating with the Marines is something pirates shouldn't do. On this ship were Jabba, Rayleigh, Whitebeard, and Rajan. Although there were only 4 people, if these 4 joined forces, they would be the strongest pirate crew on the seas. Rajan had been on this ship from the beginning. However, to avoid suspicion, he went to the Marine ship when they were close to Alabasta, and then returned when they were near. Rajan connected the world government with the pirates. Looking at the backs of Hancock and Aokiji, he said in a deep voice, well, let's follow along as well, prepare in advance at the decisive battle location. What about Roger's side? I wonder how it's going. Rayleigh looked at the sea with some concern. It wasn't a short time from Dressrosa to Alabasta. To lure Atrox from this place to Alabasta was an extremely difficult task, even with the teleportation ability of Nameless. Probably, it wasn't that simple even with this power. If Roger can't do it, then there's no one in this world who can. Jabba said, you don't know how strong Roger is now. He will definitely be able to do it. Rayleigh indeed hadn't seen Roger's current strength, as he had been confined to impel down during this time. Although he had heard about the changes in Roger's body and knew he had eaten a devil fruit, he had only heard about it, and the strength of Aatrox was witnessed by him personally. So, he didn't have much real sense of Roger's strength. Chapter 157, The Destroyed Red Earth Continent. Poof! A massive slash with crimson blood came rushing in. God's evasion! Roger shouted loudly, swinging his sword with all his might. At this moment, he was in his strongest state, with the 4 soul gem fragments, devil cells, devil fruit fusion, conqueror's haki and armament haki all converging at this precise moment. With a thunderous clash, the huge sword energy collided, causing the sea to erupt in waves. Roger's entire being was sent flying into the distance by that force. Nameless! Roger shouted again. In the place where he was being propelled towards, Nameless had already prepared for instantaneous movement. In the next second after Roger's arrival, the two of them disappeared from that place. Following in the midst of the enormous waves, Aatrox's figure broke through all obstacles. The sea trembled before him. He looked at the disappeared Roger and cruelly said, "I will cut your filthy body. Slice it. Chop it into pieces." His raging roar turned the surrounding world into chaos. Their battles along the way had already left a trail of destruction, reducing everything in their path to piles of flesh and wreckage, whether it be pirates or marines. Aatrox, transformed into a bloody storm, flew forward. Then, he saw a massive wall. It was the Red Soil Continent. The Grand Line was divided into 2 parts by this Red Soil Continent, with the first half known as Paradise and the latter half as the New World. The scale and strength of the pirates in Paradise and the New World differed significantly due to the existence of this Red Soil Continent. To traverse the Red Soil Continent, one had to either go to the Sabaody Archipelago, entering from the sea bottom through special means, or use legal methods to enter through Mary Gosa. Therefore, only powerful pirates could traverse the Red Soil Continent to reach the New World. Moreover, since the marine headquarters was in the first half of the Grand Line, it naturally became a paradise for the weaker ones. However, at this moment, the Red Soil Continent encountered Aatrox. Nothing can stop the descendant of darkness. Aatrox lifted his huge sword with one hand, looking at the walls of the Red Soil Continent with disdain, mocking the weakness of this world. To prevent Aatrox from completely losing his target and making him lose focus, Roger suddenly stopped in the distance. He stood in the air, watching Aatrox, who had also come to a halt, frowning. What is he planning? Roger thought of a possibility, but that possibility was too horrifying. He probably... Nameless also sighed in amazement at this moment. Is doing what we thought. So, as their voices fell, Aatrox did exactly what they thought. His sword stood on the Red Soil Continent. He wanted to cut open the Red Soil Continent. Could such a thing be possible? Roger's pupils contracted. The Red Soil Continent represented the boundary of the world. It had stood on the sea for thousands of years, symbolizing eternity. However, now, Aatrox struck his large sword onto the Red Soil Continent. Instantly, the wall of this part of the Red Soil Continent was shocked by immense power. The ground above, which could accommodate an entire city, first cracked, and then this cracking quickly spread downward. In Roger's incredible gaze, he saw Aatrox's colossal body shaking the seemingly unshakable Red Soil Continent. The ground on top started to crumble. Starting from the top, the originally connected Red Soil Continent suddenly revealed a gigantic gap of over 10 meters wide. The rocks fell into the sea like crazy waves, and the sea also crazily flowed into the separated sea area. Even the sea under Roger's feet was boiling. The separated sea surface seemed to be completing a convergence at this moment, creating a gap between the front and back halves of the Grand Line. And it was this gap that connected the oceans above. Is this real? Roger almost couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing. The power was too terrifying. Even the Red Soil Continent could be cut open. Was Aatrox truly invincible? This was the power of a god. Go! Nameless suddenly grabbed Roger's hand. The cooldown of the instantaneous movement had ended. They reappeared in the distance, while Aatrox continued to chase after them, breaking through the Red Soil Continent. His enormous body exuded tremendous pressure. Anything in his way was a dead end. Quick, faster! At this moment, Roger and Nameless rushed forward quickly. Aatrox closely followed behind them, and the distance between them seemed to be constantly shortening. Even with Nameless continuously using instantaneous movement, the distance between them would decrease in the cooldown. The power of natural disasters raged on the sea. Atrox had successfully set them as his target. Until the end. Nameless brought Roger to a desert. He was panting heavily, covered in sweat. Consecutive use of instantaneous movement so many times, all thanks to the 4 soul gem fragments on his hand, otherwise, he would have run out of strength long ago. However, even so, he had overused his psychic power. At this moment, he could hardly stabilize his body and knelt in the desert, using both hands to support himself on the sand. Sorry, the next path, you'll have to walk alone. Nameless breathed rapidly, saying. Don't worry, I'll definitely come back. Roger spoke in a low voice, the next path is entrusted to me. He suddenly moved forward instead of retreating. At the far end of his vision, Atrox's figure had appeared. He couldn't let Atrox come here because Nameless had no strength left. If Atrox arrived here, Nameless would undoubtedly die. So, at this moment, Roger had to face him alone because they had already entered Alabasta. Come on! Atrox! Roger suddenly roared, then slashed with his sword. His body, like light, rushed towards Atrox. Boom! Ace's and Atrox's huge swords collided, emanating a powerful force. The sand on the ground was lifted like ocean waves. Roger's full force strike clashed head-on with Atrox. Poof! Roger spat out blood. He staggered backward in another direction. His observation haki was already active, and he knew where Rayleigh and the others were at the moment. So, now it was time to regroup with them. Then, it was the final battle against the demon. Chapter 158, Until the Final Annihilation Arrives. It's here. Juba, sitting among the gathered pirates, suddenly spoke, and immediately, everyone became alert. Even if Whitebeard didn't say anything, they could feel it, because the distant sky was turning dark, incredibly dark. It was as if the clouds in the sky had been dyed pitch black, and within the dense darkness, an immensely oppressive force emanated. A kind of chaos and madness seeped from it, sending shivers down the spine. On the other side of Juba, the gathered Marines also noticed this change. The fate of this world is now in our hands. At this moment, Rajan had returned to the Marines' side because the civilians had already been evacuated, and there was no need to constantly watch the pirates. His words left others somewhat silent. He was right, if they failed, the world would be doomed. There was no one left to confront Atrox. Neither in terms of quality nor quantity. The world's top experts had gathered, and from now on, there would never be such a luxurious assembly of strength. Their battle would be unprecedented. Suddenly, they all tensed, muscles tightening. Because they felt as if a huge mountain was pressing down on them. The pressure that could only come from Atrox, and no one else in the world. Boom! Suddenly, a figure was blasted from afar, crashing through several buildings until Rayleigh caught him and finally stopped. Gurgle, Roger, you look really miserable. Whitebeard laughed at Roger, who was caught by Rayleigh. Although he was laughing, he was also amazed at Roger's strength. He knew Atrox's power very well. Many of them had been easily trampled by Atrox, and now Roger was engaging in a fight with him alone and hadn't died yet. He had indeed surpassed his past self. And Kapu in the distance also saw this scene, but he paid more attention to the front. Because, the Demon King had arrived. So, the mice have gathered. Atrox's enormous body appeared in Juba. Even the houses couldn't compare to his height, and the power emanating from his body was terrifying. Everyone, whether they had faced him before or were seeing him for the first time, felt a deep terror at this moment. However, it's good. Because those who see me as an enemy, I always accept. Atrox shouted, I will extinguish the light and create eternal darkness. Eternal darkness is where a demon like you should belong, but not ours. Rajan was the first to attack. He raised both hands, and in the next moment, a huge thunderstorm appeared in the dark clouds. Thunder greet. Rumble, the immense power of thunder intertwined into a huge sphere, a force capable of directly destroying a huge city. At this moment, it descended from the sky, just to destroy a demon. Facing a demon, there was nothing to say. Rajan's action mobilized everyone. There was no weak person present, even the weakest one, when on the sea, could become a renowned expert. At this moment, they unprecedentedly joined hands because the enemy was such a powerful demon. Thunder struck, a huge light Buddha emerged as Rai, with the intention of washing away Atrox's resentment from behind, and the crane attempted to cut off Atrox's arm with their weapons. Atrox's body emitted a strange chaos. Blood magic caused his body to surge with a wave of blood, and the next moment, it was about to engulf them. And at this moment, Asta unleashed the Rule's palm again, striking a palm on Atrox's writhing abdomen, dispersing the blood and flesh that was about to devour Rayleigh and Juba. Dragon called the raging wind, Rajan brought thunder, and Kapu attempted to wash away Atrox's resentment from behind. At that moment, the entire group formed a perfect union. Although it was their first time working together, they showed a kind of unspoken understanding like old friends. But at this instant, Atrox released a tremendous magical power. A scattered shock directly hit everyone, especially Whitebeard and Roger. The two of them, who could not resist Atrox's large sword before, were just delaying him earlier. They were like fired projectiles, crashing into various areas. Atrox's body still stood on this oasis, but this green world was being corroded by him. No, even Atrox's body was being corroded. They struggled to stand up, looking at Atrox's body. Now, this body, seemingly stolen, was constantly decaying. Pus and decayed fluids dripped down. Muscles and bones collided and tore against each other, protesting against his monstrous appearance. Without the excellent host like Barrett, his body was constantly in decay, and now without so much supply, his body would continue to deteriorate in battle. The only question was one: whether they could stay alive until Atrox's body completely decayed and broke down, still holding their lives in their hands. Atrox took a deep breath. No, Atrox. His voice was damp and hoarse, echoing in the world with people standing around him. We will keep moving forward, until the final annihilation arrives. Chapter 159, The Irreversible Corruption of the Void. Exhale. Exhale. Roger urgently exhaled, and at this moment, he could hardly suppress the pain surging through his body. He had already been moderately injured during the brief skirmish with Atrox before, and just now, he was hit again by Atrox's magical shock, worsening his injuries. But Atrox's condition was also not good. Since arriving in Alabasta, he hadn't received any replenishment of flesh and blood. As long as they could successfully delay the time until his body naturally decayed, they would win. Boom! The monster rushed over at an extremely fast speed. Roger didn't dodge, instead, he also charged towards Atrox at an equally rapid speed. Because Atrox's target was Kapu, and with one arm missing, Kapu would find it challenging to deal with Atrox's heavy blows. So, this was Roger's significance. If others were to face Atrox one-on-one, they would probably not withstand a serious strike. However, he could, and he could even engage in a brief struggle with Atrox. If it weren't for him, no matter how many people were present, Atrox would easily break through them. Once he got serious, no one could react to his attacks. Boom! Just as Kapu was about to be cut down or at least heavily injured by Atrox, Roger suddenly appeared. Like an ant, Roger swung a long sword that, relative to Atrox, was like a thin needle. The erupted power instantly made the weather change. Rumble! Kapu looked somewhat dazed at Roger, who suddenly appeared in front of him. He gritted his teeth, unwillingly threw a punch, and joined Roger in resisting Atrox. Indeed, he felt unwilling. He didn't expect this emotion to resurface in his heart after so many years. This was the emotion of a weakling, and he hadn't been a weakling for some time. But now, in front of Atrox and Roger, he was indeed weak. If it weren't for Roger, he would have at least been heavily injured by Atrox just now. His haki-coated hardening could not necessarily withstand Atrox's large sword, given the vast difference in their strength. With both hands intact, he still had a certain chance to defend against a few moves. However, losing one arm was undoubtedly a significant blow for someone who relied on his fists like him. Boom! He and Roger were forced back by Atrox's power, and at this time, others' attacks reached Atrox. Atrox's body squirmed with blood and flesh as he swung the large sword. The attacks of the world's top experts dissipated into nothingness. Kapu also fell to the ground, watching Roger's figure still standing. In his heart, a sense of shame inexplicably rose. The Marines had reached the point where they had to rely on pirates. The reason he found it difficult to accept the God Valley incident was because it was something he and Roger's pirate crew accomplished together. Moreover, the world government directly ignored Roger's crew's statement that it was done by him and Garp. How could he accept such a thing? And now, it seemed like a scene from back then was being reenacted, even more humiliating because the Marines couldn't do anything. This sense of shame quickly fermented in Kapu's heart, gradually transforming into an ugly resentment and hatred. Vice Admiral Kapu. What's wrong with you? Just as he was thinking like this, Asta's voice suddenly came to his ears. The majestic voice produced by the Buddha's transformation made Kapu wake up from his thoughts in an instant. He found himself still lying on the ground, while Roger was still fighting Atrox with others. What was I thinking just now? Kapu felt like he had fallen into an icy cave. Why did he think that just now? Kapu looked at Asta, who had come to his side, shook his head suddenly, and shouted loudly, "Be careful! Atrox's demonic aura can lead people to corruption. Don't stay near him for too long. Egret! Help me!" He suddenly thought of the information from the Blackbeard pirates. It was frequently mentioned that devils had the ability to seduce people's hearts. They often used conditions and benefits to make people's souls corrupt. Just now, he was undoubtedly affected by this ability. His words made everyone's faces change, even Roger was no exception, as he also felt that at times, dark thoughts would arise in his heart. Kapu saw the expressions of the people and felt somewhat fortunate, as luckily, Egret was here. Egret, a user of the wash fruit, had the ability to wash people clean like clothes and purify the darkness in their hearts. And now, there was no more suitable ability than this. She was the second most important figure after Roger. This is trouble. Egret had already come to Kapu's side. She sighed lightly, "I'm running out of strength." Only now did Kapu notice that Egret's body was covered in blood, with many torn wounds. The torn areas seemed to darken and turn grey, as if they were dying. A silent breath of death pervaded them. Blood was also at her mouth. In this intense battle, she was reaching her limit. Egret was undoubtedly very powerful within the Marines, but in the entire world, she wasn't a top-tier expert like Whitebeard. In a battle of this scale, she had already done remarkably well to last until now. It's not just the two of us. Kapu looked at the distant battle, gritted his teeth, and said, "Everyone is almost at their limit." The duration of this battle was not long, unlike many people who could fight for 10 hours or even days and nights in a one-on-one duel. But in this battle, everyone was in a state of full combat all the time. The consumption of physical strength was extremely severe. Roger could certainly see the situation around him, but his inner darkness was also stirred up by Atrox. Originally, with his strength, he wouldn't be hit so quickly, but he had eaten the strange person cell, and now he was in a strange person state, which inherently carried a strong sense of darkness. The previous darkness was suppressed by Roger's will, but now Atrox's power strengthened the darkness in his heart, and this darkness seemed uncontrollable. He faintly felt something. Even if Atrox no longer existed, even if they sealed Atrox, this darkness might not disappear. Chapter 160, Dominance, the Power of Makama. This is not mere speculation, it is the power Roger gained after reaching the pinnacle of his observation haki. Originally, his observation haki was already very powerful, and after integrating the shards of the Shikon Jewel, it became even stronger. Even though his observation haki was somewhat restrained in its effectiveness in strange person mode due to eating the strange person cell, after extensive training, he had almost mastered it. In his current state, his observation haki could even directly enter others' bodies and feed their weaknesses back to him. Therefore, each of Roger's strikes targeted the weakest points of the enemy's strength. He named this aspect of observation haki weakness perception. This ability not only allowed him to sense the weaknesses of his opponents but also analyze the strength of their techniques. So, the premonition rising in his heart was not mere speculation but the actual effect of Atrox's power. The darkness unleashed by Atrox would implant itself in people's hearts, and this darkness wouldn't dissipate. Even if it were eliminated by some ability, it would gradually reappear. At this moment, his observation haki could also sense that Rayleigh and others were nearing the limit of corruption. "Retreat!" Roger roared abruptly. "Quickly leave this place. The power released by Atrox can transform people into demons." The crowd was shocked. They never expected Atrox to possess such a power. Atrox laughed heartily, but within his laughter, there was a sense of anger, as if he wanted to burn down the entire world in rage. All life shall come to an end. Although his body had decayed significantly, his fighting spirit showed no signs of decline. Watching the others in fear, he spoke loudly again. "I once had another name. I once, like you, stood against the darkness as a beacon of light. I witnessed the radiance of thousands of suns. However, now I have a new name. Abyssal Kin. Boom. The sword swing caused a violent wind that surpassed even the storm created by Dragon. The storm, reversing its course, pushed Dragon towards the distance. People, in a state of fear of turning into demons, couldn't fully engage Aatrox in battle. He was about to strike Raleigh again, but Roger rushed over to stop him. I don't know who you were before or what experiences you've had, but this isn't a reason to vent your anger on the world. Roger angrily said through gritted teeth, now, go back to where you belong. Of course, I will. Aatrox stared at the human fighting against him, exuding endless malicious mockery. After everything in this world settles down, I will return to where I should be. Annihilation. Roger was slammed to the ground by Aatrox's sword, but in an instant, he stood up again, buying time against Aatrox. Whitebeard, using the power of the Tremor fruit, made an impactful strike. He was one of the few people present who hadn't been deeply corrupted by Aatrox's evil darkness because a Shikon Jewel shard in his body kept his soul pure. Roger also maintained clarity due to several Shikon Jewel shards within him. The immense shock hit Aatrox, and coupled with Roger's strike, pushed him back a step. Whitebeard and Roger took advantage of this moment to catch their breath. In this high-intensity battle, they were nearly exhausted. Others were in a similar state, and the longer they stayed near Aatrox, the more they would be corrupted. So, what should they do? Initially, they thought that with the power of so many people, they could deal with Aatrox. But when it came to that point, many had already been transformed into demons. However, at this moment, as Aatrox prepared to launch another attack, his chest suddenly burst open, and a large amount of blood sprayed out. What happened? Aatrox seemed momentarily unaware of what had occurred. Then he spoke through gritted teeth, it's you, manipulator. What happened? What happened? Roger and Whitebeard looked at this scene. Although they didn't know what had happened, anyone could see that it was the best opportunity to deal with Aatrox. Meanwhile, inside the Holy Mary Gosa, the 5 elders were still in their retirement home, the Pangaea Castle, between the seats of power. Before them were 2 images. One was the battle in Alabasta, where they knew the decisive confrontation was taking place, so they needed to keep a close eye on it. The other was in the Royal Plaza of Alabasta, where the royal family of Alabasta and some guards were gathered. What is she doing? They spoke towards the central woman in the image. The woman stood with her hands behind her back. At this moment, she turned to face the camera, revealing herself to be Mokvice. Yes, the marshal of the Blackbeard Pirates. She was supposed to go to Juba, but now she appeared in the royal capital, Alyaburna. At this moment in the Juba battlefield, which had reached its most intense stage, many were exhausted, and the situation seemed to be sealed. However, the other main force against Aatrox, Mokvice, was calmly making her moves in Alyaburna. Mokvice seemed unaware of the 5 elders monitoring her. She continued her actions as before. On her sides were numerous prisoners kneeling and blindfolded. They were all extreme and heinous criminals sentenced to death. The time is almost here. Mokvice softly spoke as she approached the prisoners. Please, follow me and say a name. Around her, there was also the king of Alabasta. He looked at the woman with confusion, but if she said that doing this would deal with Aatrox, he could only listen to her for now. Those prisoners, originally extremely wicked, now seemed as innocent as children, as if fearing some kind of monster. Mokvice extended her hands, making a strange posture. She softly uttered a name, and a name that struck fear into everyone. Aatrox. After uttering those words, the 2 rows of prisoners around her all collapsed. The 5 elders were astonished. Even though they didn't understand what had happened, it was clear that this was the best moment to deal with Aatrox. Back on the battlefield, Aatrox's chest suddenly burst open, creating a massive blood splatter. What is this? The 5 elders were stunned, mixed with a hint of fear. What power? Chapter 161, Makama's Power of Control, the Key to Hell. All of this is too bizarre. Mokvice herself is in Alyaburna, bringing only a few prisoners, yet in that moment, she inflicted a wound on Aatrox, the first time he has been injured in this battle. If they hadn't witnessed it happening right in front of them, they wouldn't have believed it. Aatrox's power was displayed too dominantly before, but now Mokvice, from such a distant location, attempted an assassination. Doesn't this mean that, if she wishes, she can use such a method on them too? This is terrifying. Equally shocked are the people at the core of the battlefield in Juba. They watched Atrox, who had displayed immense power earlier, suddenly suffer a traumatic blow. Large amounts of flesh were torn apart in that moment. What's going on here? Even Roger was stunned. There's no need to think, it's that woman's doing. The four sisters like playing these kinds of conspiracies. Atrox's words carried a strong mockery. But it doesn't matter, conspiracies are the privilege of the weak. He swung his sword forcefully. The strike wasn't aimed at Roger or anyone on Juba. With a swing of the massive sword, the attack went directly northeast, towards the direction of Alabasta's capital, Aluberna. Boom! In an instant, even the sky was split open. The thick clouds seemed plowed like cultivated land. A massive force thundered towards the distance, carrying endless brutality and destruction. In Aluberna, people felt a sudden powerful oppression. Even before that force approached, they involuntarily knelt on the ground, as if bearing tremendous pressure. Some even had blood flowing from their noses. What's going on? The king himself was almost breathless from the pressure. Perhaps only Mokvice, standing unharmed in Aluberna, could withstand it. Mokvice didn't answer the king's question. At this moment, she went all out. Above her, a halo made of flesh appeared, seemingly containing something inside. Countless chains extended from her navel into the flesh halo. From that halo emerged a sun, thunderclouds, and a sword. It was Mokvice's version of Prometheus, Zeus, and Napoleon. At this moment, she infused her power into them, and the three forces instantly merged. Boom! With a powerful sword swing, she released a tremendous force. Meanwhile, Atrox's sword energy had already reached beyond Alabasta. People could see the previously split clouds from there. At this moment, the collision of two forces occurred outside Aluberna. There was a deafening roar, and a huge mushroom cloud rose from that direction. Previously, the clouds were just split, but now they were directly dispersed. The cosmic rays reached the surface of the world, and sunlight illuminated the previously gloomy world. The entire Aluberna, under the shock of the collision, trembled like an earthquake. People panicked and fled. After Mokvice unleashed her power, the pressure on them eased significantly. That allowed them to express their panic more vividly. Afterward, the collision of forces concluded. Although Atrox was powerful, it was evident that even such a formidable force, crossing such a vast distance, perhaps hundreds of kilometers, would be considerably weakened. After Mokvice blocked this attack, her figure suddenly disappeared. In Juba, Roger, at the first moment of Atrox's attack, didn't react in time. By the time he realized what Atrox had done, it was too late. Atrox had already swung the sword. What was in that direction? He didn't know, but whatever the enemy wanted to do, he couldn't let it happen easily. Roger was about to seize the opportunity to attack Atrox, but at this moment, many anomalies suddenly occurred. Many rats suddenly ran out from around that pyramid. The rats piled up, forming a humanoid shape. In the next moment, Mokvice's figure appeared within it. Everyone present was stunned, looking at Mokvice, who had suddenly appeared. How did she arrive? Wasn't Atrox attacking her earlier? At the last moment, you still won't appear. Mokvice stood in front of the pyramid, looking at Atrox with his back turned to the pyramid. She spoke softly, if a demon lord wants to destroy this place, it wouldn't be beneficial for you, right? She is. Speaking to whom? Roger frowned. He spread his observation haki, and at this moment, he suddenly froze. He saw something appearing in his hand. It was a green pyramid. What is this? This question appeared in his mind at the same time as the answer. The functionality of this green pyramid was captured by his observation haki. His eyes widened as he looked at Mokvice. Mokvice remained composed. She also saw the green pyramid in Roger's hand. Do you put your hope in someone severely injured? She suddenly chuckled, well, if that's your choice. I'll be happy to oblige. After saying that, her figure suddenly disappeared again. Appearing suddenly and disappearing just as abruptly, Mokvice's actions were puzzling. Atrox seemed to recognize her, but after her arrival, Atrox didn't say anything to her, and she didn't say anything to Atrox. It's as if Mokvice didn't come to deal with Atrox but specifically to talk to the unidentified person. Clearly, that person didn't hand the green pyramid to Mokvice but transmitted it to Roger's hand. Roger didn't know who that was, but Dragon, Cap, and Crane did. It was the gatekeeper of hell, Suzuki Aizen. Did Mokvice have some acquaintance with him? The events that happened thousands or even tens of thousands of years ago were confusing, but regardless, Roger now knew what he had to do. He looked at Atrox, and Atrox looked at him. The key to hell, so that's it. Atrox said softly at this moment. Is this your plan? To seal me within the boundary? It seems like a good idea. This should be the idea of that woman manipulator, right? I don't know who manipulator is, but this is Mokvice's idea. Roger said coldly. Come on, this is the final battle. Chapter 162, Cut off Atrox's right hand. The green pyramid merged into Roger's body. Roger was grateful that he had consumed the fusion devil fruit, allowing him to rapidly enhance his strength using its abilities. If it were any other devil fruit, he might not have been able to utilize these enhancements effectively. The moment the green pyramid entered his body, his haki skyrocketed. The overwhelming conqueror's haki didn't need to confront anyone, it tore apart the sky on its own, dispelling the clouds and darkness brought by Atrox. This pyramid unlocked all the latent potential of his haki. Now, he could claim to have the strongest haki in the world. Although, one could argue it was already the strongest before. Atrox grinned, now, you finally look a bit more interesting. The two clashed instantly, shaking the world with colossal force. In that moment, the entire Juba was destroyed. Except for the central pyramid, all remaining structures were blown away. The entire oasis was upheaved, turning everything into a monotonous yellow under the sweeping sandstorm. The two went from the ground to the sky, pierced through the clouds, and even reached higher altitudes. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared from the Juba region. No, Juba itself was no more. This was a battle at their level, effortlessly capable of destroying human kingdoms. Roger successfully repelled Atrox with a sword strike. This was the first time he directly suppressed Atrox, and with a thunderous crash, both Roger and Atrox found themselves at the border of Alabasta. The ocean is your weakness. Atrox sneered. With a wave of his hand, countless thread-like entities appeared on Roger's body. These threads crazily pulled at Roger, and below them was the Sandora River. This river separated two regions of Alabasta and connected to the sea. It seemed as though Atrox intended to drag Roger into the Sandora River. Roger's sword descended toward the tentacles below, but at this moment, Atrox slammed a sword down. Roger quickly retreated. While he couldn't prevent the giant sword from slashing his body, the hasty defense wasn't as strong as Atrox's attack. He was sent plummeting into the Sandora River from the sky. Splash! As his body hit the water, a massive sound echoed. Almost immediately after, an even louder sound followed because Atrox also entered the Sandora River. The moment he entered the water, he swung his sword downward, swiftly striking Roger, who was attempting to resurface. In the water, Roger, significantly weakened, couldn't resist Atrox's sword. This is bad. At this moment, the disadvantage of having eaten a devil fruit in a sea battle became apparent. Although it granted immense power, it felt too constricting in a naval engagement. At this moment, his body flickered with a green light. Suddenly, he felt his strength restored. Was the portable pyramid enhancing his maritime combat talents? The enhancement of Conqueror's haki disappeared, now replaced by an augmentation of his ability to fight in the sea. While Roger's overall strength had decreased, it had significantly increased within the water. What could have been a fatal blow from Atrox was now deflected by Roger. Taking advantage of Atrox's power, he quickly distanced himself and erupted at his highest speed, breaking through the water surface. God's evasion! Roger roared. A single slash cleaved the entire Sandora River, creating a massive gap in the riverbed. Atrox found himself within this gap, unharmed. As a human, you've achieved quite a bit, Atrox said with a smirk. But do you think you're still human? The power of the devil world will corrupt you. The darkness within will replace your will. You'll become a new devil, then replace one of the 8. Are you fighting to protect this world? It's so amusing. Now, I look forward to the day when you, as a devil, bring slaughter to this world. If I could witness that scene, even if it means bringing destruction to the world a bit later, it would be worth it. Atrox laughed heartily. I may sound a bit sarcastic, but I think you can understand, right? After all, I am a sword. Roger didn't say anything, just breathing rapidly and urgently. What Atrox said made some sense. Roger had been deeply influenced by the demonic power emanating from Atrox during their prolonged battle. Occasionally, dark thoughts would emerge in his mind. The side effects of consuming the devil fruit also surfaced at this moment. Perhaps, one day, he would indeed become what Atrox described? Or perhaps, Atrox himself was once like this? He resisted the darkness in the past, but eventually, he turned into darkness. Now, he was about to bring this darkness to the world. Don't talk so much! Roger suddenly shouted. To prevent that scene from happening, I need to end this fight quickly. With a sword in each hand, or rather, holding both hands because Ace had already fused into his right hand, green light flickered within. In an instant, the entire world seemed to pause. Atrox similarly prepared. Both had been fighting for too long, and now it was time to determine the winner. Boom! At an unknown moment, and it wasn't clear who moved first, but it seemed like they moved simultaneously. Two swords, one giant and one slender, collided with equal force. Splash! Silent but forceful slashes, Atrox and Roger's positions intertwined, and the next moment, a large amount of blood spurted from Roger's chest. Atrox's right hand had a deep wound, as if he were about to cut off the entire hand. However, it remained connected by a thin thread even after the last connection was broken. The entire right hand was on the verge of detaching. Atrox turned around, using his left hand to pinch the falling Roger. At this moment, Roger had become a man covered in blood, and the previous slash had almost rendered him unconscious. But, even if that's the case, is it not enough? Roger felt a sense of despair. For this battle, he had gained so much power, only to find out that in the end, he couldn't do anything? You've done well, for a human. Atrox grinned, and with a proud voice, he said, you qualify to be my host. Use your body to bring destruction to this world. The flesh on his body wriggled, as if intending to engulf Roger. Roger couldn't resist, he had no strength left. And others couldn't help either, as their battle had reached the Sandora River. How could they catch up? However, at this moment, Mokvai's voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Sever Atrox's right hand. Chapter 163, Seal Atrox. At this moment, Roger was almost motionless, but with the sound of Mokvai's voice in his ears, his nearly disabled arm suddenly moved. Atrox was about to engulf Roger, just a bit more, and the crimson flesh had even squirmed close to Roger. However, at this moment, Roger's body moved involuntarily. Just in that instant, the blade flashed by. Comparable to the peak strike Roger unleashed in his peak state, the green pyramid enhanced his haki, and with a squelching sound, it sliced through all the approaching flesh. The surging force even formed a huge crescent, directly cutting off Atrox's right hand holding the giant sword. Atrox was shocked, but this shock couldn't last because when the sword lost its connection with the flesh, Atrox was completely cut off from influencing the outside world. Equally shocked was Roger, who couldn't believe his sudden sword strike. Immediately after, a strong backlash hit him. Already close to shock, overexerting his power caused him intense pain. Roger and Atrox, along with the sword, fell from the sky. Or rather, one person, one sword, and numerous flesh chunks. The sky seemed to rain crimson blood, and within the blood rain, the two strongest beings in the world were present. At this moment, Rayleigh and others had finally arrived. Assisted by the dragon's tempest, they were faster with the wind at their backs. In their arrival, they witnessed Roger and Atrox descending simultaneously. Mokvais abruptly appeared in front of everyone. She made another strange gesture and, the next moment, the green pyramid separated from Roger's body. This powerful item, called the Key to Hell by Atrox, was what allowed Roger to truly fight against Atrox. Now separated from Roger, it caused Roger's body to convulse. He was already supporting himself with the 4 soul jade fragments in his body. Losing one pyramid diminished his healing ability considerably. Mokvais wanted this green pyramid. Behind her, Rayleigh and others shrank at this scene. They vaguely felt that perhaps this key to hell was Mokvais' true goal. Everything about dealing with Atrox and luring Roger here might all be excuses for her to obtain this key to hell. Although they were still in an alliance at the moment, they couldn't help but harbor suspicious thoughts. Maybe Mokvais didn't do all this for Atrox, they might have been manipulated. Whether they were pirates or the Marines, this thought occurred in their minds. However, as they pondered what to do next, a pyramid suddenly appeared in the parting sea. It was the pyramid that was previously in Juba. But how could it suddenly appear here? Of course, it was due to the instant movement ability of the superpower training box. This teleportation ability wasn't exclusive to self-movement. Within the pyramid were countless homies created by Mach Vice. Using instant movement to arrive in the sea was indeed possible. The moment the real pyramid appeared, the key to hell separated from Roger and ended up in the hands of a man. He was handsome, with long hair and shallow purple eyes. It was Sosuke Aizen. The pirates didn't know him, but Dragon did. At this moment, Aizen stood in the air, and countless pink cherry blossoms fluttered, wrapping around the green pyramid. He glanced at Mach Vice in the end, and she looked back at him. The two didn't say a word. Mach Vice, with her hands behind her back, suddenly laughed lightly and disappeared again the next moment. This time, she didn't reappear anywhere. Aizen looked at the departing Mach Vice and still didn't say anything. The next moment, the demonic sword transformed by Roger and Atrox descended. However, Aizen made a surprising move. He actually reached out and grabbed Atrox's demonic sword. Is he crazy? Doesn't he know that grabbing that demonic sword will let Atrox seize control of him? They had just managed to defeat Atrox, and now Aizen was going to resurrect him? However, in the next moment, Aizen showed no signs of change. He held the giant demonic sword, and the whole person suddenly disappeared. The rapid disappearance made everyone present unable to see clearly. At the same time, the separated pyramid in the sea vanished too. All of this happened in an extremely short time, so short that they couldn't understand what had happened. Roger successfully killed Atrox, Mach Vice appeared to seize the key to hell, and Aizen appeared to protect it. Yet, when he held Atrox's demonic sword and disappeared with the pyramid, everyone. Was he out of his mind? Doesn't he know that grabbing that demonic sword will let Atrox seize control of him? They had just managed to defeat Atrox, and now Aizen was going to resurrect him? However, in the next moment, Aizen showed no signs of change. He held the giant demonic sword, and the whole person suddenly disappeared. The rapid disappearance made everyone present unable to see clearly. At the same time, the separated pyramid in the sea vanished too. All of this happened in an extremely short time, so short that they couldn't understand what had happened. Roger successfully killed Atrox, Mach Vice appeared to seize the key to hell, and Aizen appeared to protect it. Yet, when he held Atrox's demonic sword and disappeared with the pyramid, everyone was. Doesn't he know that grabbing that demonic sword will let Atrox seize control of him? They had just managed to defeat Atrox, and now Aizen was going to resurrect him? However, in the next moment, Aizen showed no signs of change. He held the giant demonic sword, and the whole person suddenly disappeared. The rapid disappearance made everyone present unable to see clearly. At the same time, the separated pyramid in the sea vanished too. All of this happened in an extremely short time, so short that they couldn't understand what had happened. Roger successfully killed Atrox, Mach Vice appeared to seize the key to hell, and Aizen appeared to protect it. Yet, when he held Atrox's demonic sword and disappeared with the pyramid, everyone was. The shock of fighting Atrox infected all of them during the battle. Chapter 164, The World Situation, The Jade of Four Souls. They could feel a slight taint in their own souls. That bit of darkness could potentially corrode their hearts, turning them into demons similar to Atrox. What Rayleigh meant by not becoming enemies with him was precisely this. He wasn't a marine, wouldn't bother with pirates, only with demons. Hope so. Rayleigh said noncommittally, the fragile alliance of pirates, marines, and demon hunters is about to end. We'll meet again if fate allows. He looked at Nameless, and Nameless nodded, understanding his meaning. After a while, all the pirates disappeared from here. Roger was severely injured, and they needed to find a safe place for recovery. Arabasta was definitely not a safe place. It wasn't that they didn't trust Cap, but they had a lack of trust in the world government. Cap and others knew what they meant and didn't say anything. The battle is over, and even the Admiral has left. I should leave too. Rayleigh spoke and left swiftly before Cap could respond. Cap was about to ask Mach Vice what she intended to do, but Rayleigh had already vanished, causing him to curse under his breath. So quick to run. Thus, only the original few remained in Arabasta. Initially, they were these Marines, and now they were still these Marines. The difference was that the once picturesque Arabasta was now a mess. But they had to admit, they had won. Atrox had been successfully sealed away and wouldn't appear in this world again. However, what about Roger? Roger's current strength, even without the Green Pyramid, was unparalleled. How would the Marines deal with such a pirate? It was indeed worrisome. They couldn't go back for now. They had to represent the world government and complete the post-war transition with Arabasta. The news of Atrox being successfully sealed naturally spread worldwide. The whole world soon buzzed with excitement. People from all walks of life, whether previously cheering or despairing at the world's end, breathed a sigh of relief. As the saying goes, better alive than dead. Even those living in miserable conditions felt a moment of joy when they saw this news. In any case, they won. Atrox, who had wielded immense power before, was now sealed, allowing them to break free from this miserable life. Whether celebrating Atrox's grandeur or celebrating his sealing, they felt joy in both cases. Especially the nobles were ecstatic, thrown into revelry. Those from the New World, in particular, were thrilled, for Atrox might show up at any moment. Of course, during the propaganda, the world government deliberately downplayed the pirates' contributions, claiming the heroic Marines bravely fought against Atrox in Arabasta, and the one-armed Marine hero, Cap, fought to the death and successfully defeated Atrox. Cap, having previously joined forces with warlord Warguy to defeat the Rock, now defeated Atrox solo, making him the only and strongest Marine hero. His glory wasn't only recognized in the Marines but also throughout the world. Even the Blackbeard pirates, let alone the Cypher Paul, barely appeared in the reports. One could say that the current era's newspapers were still under the control of the world government. They were petty thieves of achievements, stealing Roger's achievements. It wasn't until the appearance of the news coup Morgan that the world government's monopoly on news was finally challenged. Ignoring the Cypher Paul was for a reason. After all, they weren't as easy to control as the Marines, and Mokvice had made some unclear moves in the end. The five elders were currently troubled by Mokvice's actions. Regardless, she was indeed a capable individual. This time, defeating Atrox was a great achievement for her. Still, she had her own thoughts. Currently, the five elders didn't know what she was up to. Therefore, until they fully controlled the Cypher Paul, they had to give all the glory to the Marines. Meanwhile, the seas were in turmoil. Atrox's previous slaughter claimed the lives of many powerful pirates. The entire New World was undergoing a reshuffle. After the Arabasta incident, Sendo didn't cause any more trouble. Now was a time of excitement, and it was best to let people release their excitement for the moment. He also needed positive emotional values. The most exciting thing for him in this Arabasta battle was the substantial increase in positive emotional values. Perhaps this time, he could reach the level of 1,000,000. A 1,000,000 level item card. He hadn't seen it yet. Considering the value of positive emotional values compared to negative ones, although it wouldn't surpass the world's limit, there wouldn't be much difference between 1,000,000 and 100,000 level item cards. So, might as well draw now. Positive emotional value, 4,5 15,7 12. Negative emotional value, 8,7 41, 321. The negative emotional value was close to 10 million again, while the positive emotional value was nearly 5 million. At this moment, after the brief celebration following the Arabasta incident, the positive emotional value was entering a slow growth phase. Initially, he had some expectations of reaching 1,000,000 positive emotional values. Now it seemed challenging to extract so much positive emotion from people, mainly because the previous accumulation was too low. Forget it. Anyway, the difference between 1,000,000 and 100,000 level item cards won't be significant. Mind made up, Sendo decided to use the positive emotional values. He currently had the Doraemon item series and the Shikon Jewel series. He could perform 4 draws at the 1,000,000 level and additionally make 2 more draws. 4 Shikon Jewel fragments would be handy now as they were running a bit low. He might even try to assemble the genuine Shikon Jewel with enough fragments. Shikon Jewel Fragment 80, originating from the Inuyasha world, these are fragments produced after the Shikon Jewel shattered. They can amplify the user's power. The more fragments possessed, the more abilities one can have. The complete Shikon Jewel can fulfill the user's wishes. When drawing cards while holding Shikon Jewel fragments, it increases the probability of drawing Shikon Jewel fragments. Sendo was astonished. He hadn't expected to draw 80 Shikon Jewel fragments in one go. This thing. Was it for real? The Shikon Jewel. Didn't it have a total of less than 80 fragments? Chapter 165, Mechanical Manufacturing Machine and Red Alert Base Vehicle. After the Shikon Jewel shattered, it was said to have split into 10 million fragments, but in reality, there were only a total of 79 fragments. Now, in a single draw, he directly obtained 80 Shikon Jewel fragments, which was a bit unrealistic. Could it be that he could accumulate an infinite number of Shikon Jewel fragments? Thinking this, he materialized these 80 Shikon Jewel fragments. In the next moment, a magnificent jewel with only one corner missing appeared in his hand. In theory, 80 Shikon Jewel fragments could definitely form a complete Shikon Jewel. However, he currently had one corner empty. Judging by the size of the gap in that corner, it was precisely the size of the sum of the Shikon Jewel fragments he had dispersed. In other words, the Shikon Jewel he created was determined by the number of Shikon Jewel fragments he currently possessed. The more Shikon Jewel fragments, the larger and stronger the Shikon Jewel. A Shikon Jewel formed by 80 or even 100 fragments would undoubtedly surpass a Shikon Jewel formed by 79 fragments. This was a good thing. Although the original Shikon Jewel was already powerful, the world had differences. The Four Souls Jewel, which was omnipotent in the Inuyasha world, might not necessarily succeed in the One Piece world. Moreover, the wishes fulfilled by the Shikon Jewel were quite peculiar. On the surface, the Shikon Jewel could resurrect the dead, turn half-demons into full-fledged demons, and even grant wishes. But in reality, all these were traps set by the Shikon Jewel. The so-called granting wishes by the Shikon Jewel was essentially fulfilling desires beneficial to the Shikon Jewel itself. It only wanted to exist indefinitely, making it fundamentally an evil artifact. That's why it required purification by a priestess. In the end, even Naraku was swayed and manipulated by the Shikon Jewel itself. Sendo could feel the continuous internal struggles within the Shikon Jewel. The Shikon Jewel was formed by the fusion of the souls of the ancient priestess Kikyo and countless powerful demons. They engaged in endless battles within it for centuries, which was the source of the Shikon Jewel's power. In other words, if the wishes to be fulfilled exceeded the limit of a certain special power formed by the hundreds of souls of demons and Kikyo, it would be impossible to succeed. However, now that he could continuously acquire Shikon Jewel fragments, he could strengthen the power of the Shikon Jewel. At least for now, the Shikon Jewel was still under his control. But the more powerful the item or character, the more likely it was to develop some form of consciousness. For example, when he obtained Aatrox earlier, he could vividly feel his anger and resentment. If the Shikon Jewel grew to a certain point, it might really bring the evil Shikon Jewel from the Inuyasha world into the One Piece world. However, their life and death were always in Sendo's hands. With this in mind, Sendo suddenly had a doubt. If he could use special means to liberate all the souls within the Shikon Jewel, would the priestess and those powerful demons within it appear in this world? Honestly, this was entirely possible because he now had a Shinigami's clone. Aizen Sosuke, as a Shinigami from the world of Bleach, shouldn't have any problems researching souls. Although the concept of souls in the Bleach world and the Inuyasha world were completely different, they were now unified within the One Piece world. He temporarily stored the Shikon Jewel, then proceeded to the next card draw. Mechanical manufacturing machine. From the world of Doraemon, this is an item that can manufacture machinery. As long as the design blueprint is input, along with the corresponding materials, the machine will automatically produce the corresponding item. This was a relatively large item, and it was a rare research item. It was quite suitable for him now since he didn't have a scientist clone. Sendo himself didn't understand much about the design of planes and tanks, but he could leave this to Vegapunk. Vegapunk had many design blueprints, but due to time and budget constraints, he hadn't utilized them. With this item, it became straightforward. Moreover, Sendo could transmit some of his ideas through Machvice to create the items he needed. However, this mechanical manufacturing machine, as the name suggested, could only manufacture mechanical items. It couldn't be used for biological modification or pharmaceutical production. This was good. Sendo, in a cheerful mood, drew again. Red Alert Base Car, France. From the world of Red Alert 2, this is the base car of the Allied forces in France. It can construct your own country, has the exclusive technology French super cannon, and also possesses the unique Allied super weapons Chronostorm and Chronoporter. Each super weapon requires 500,000 positive emotional values to unlock. Seeing this information, Sendo was shocked. Could something like this be created as well? The Red Alert base car, as the introduction said, could directly build a country. And it was the French Red Alert base car. Honestly, when he played Red Alert before, he liked using France the most. Occupy a good geographical position, then set up a few super cannons, no one could break in. What surprised him even more were the super weapons. He didn't expect that such things could also be materialized, but they required 500,000 positive emotional values to unlock this technology. Build a country. This was indeed a good idea. He needed a place to establish his territory, where he could freely harvest positive emotional values. By making the people of a country live in peace and prosperity, they would naturally generate continuous positive emotions toward their king. This red alert base car came at the perfect time. Moreover, he had been thinking about the issue of the mechanical manufacturing machine before. Now, besides Vegapunk, he also had his own research lab. Since this place was a technology center, it should have research capabilities, right? However, the geographical location needed careful consideration. If he wanted to establish a country, where should he build it? This was indeed a question worth pondering, as geographical location was crucial. Because his creations couldn't provide him with emotional values, to harvest others' emotions, he needed a large population. Most of his Red Alert base would serve as military force, and the produced troops would be the same. To have a steady influx of positive emotional values, he needed to attract a large population. The more people, the more prosperous the country, and the more positive emotional values he would obtain. Chapter 166, Eliminate Pi and Reappearance of Byakuya Kokaki. Another crucial point is the need for resources. Many constructions require a large amount of gold or money to manufacture. Relying solely on pirate plundering or funds from the black organization is obviously insufficient to support the development of a country. Therefore, he needs to find a place that is resource-rich and can attract a large population. He considered several places, but he decided to observe more carefully later. He is not in a hurry at the moment. Afterward, he proceeded with the fourth card draw. Card Erasure, from the card captor Sakura World, it's one of the Clow cards, possessing the magic to erase people and objects, symbolizing the stagnation of luck and a warning to wait a moment. When holding the Clow cards while drawing, it can increase the probability of drawing other Clow cards. A card appeared in Sendo's hand, and he was slightly lost in thought. This thing seems like an item from the anime he watched when he was a child. The card Erasure possesses a mysterious power that can directly make people and objects disappear from this world. It can also make the disappeared person reappear, and the vanished person will forget the memories after their disappearance. In comparison, there's another card in the Clow cards called the Void, but the power of card Erasure is far from comparable to the Void. The Void is used to balance the other 52 Clow cards, and its magic is the strongest, capable of turning everything into nothing. While card Erasure has a similar ability, its essence and magical power are far inferior. If card Erasure is considered 1 million item cards, then the Void would definitely be 10 million item cards. However, just like the Shikon Jewel, these cards also possess some self-awareness. But now, in Sendo's hands, that self-awareness is very weak. Only cards on the level of 10 million items would have slightly more noticeable self-awareness. Now, I'm already quite perfect. Sendo looked at the 4 items he obtained this time and couldn't help feeling emotional. Item cards are indeed more powerful than character cards. He still has a piece of Kizaru's remains in his hand, but he doesn't want to use it right now because it would only turn into a ferocious monster. It's far better to create a powerful and controlled Kizaru by producing the seed of Kizaru. Well, let's see if there's a way to create the seed of Kizaru first. He's not in a hurry now. Sendo thought so in his heart. He really isn't in a hurry now. As mentioned before, after going through consecutive major events, both he and this world need some time to settle down. Let the other clones develop slowly for now. Mokvice continues to be a mole in the world government, Aokiji dutifully serves as an admiral in the Marines, Hody Jones reappears in the sea to search for Shikon Jewel fragments, Byakuya Kokaki remains a mysterious descendant of a Shinigami, attracting continuous pursuit by those in power, and Atokskis waits for his next appearance inside the pyramid. On the other hand, the world government increased support for the Marines because of the false propaganda that the Marines defeated Atokskis. Many people were attracted to join the Marines, and the new generation of Marine forces became exceptionally powerful. The selection for the third admiral is already underway. More importantly, a significant number of talents joined the Marines this time, ensuring that the Marines will have sufficient strength to dominate the seas for decades to come. The Black Organization also attracted many people to join, but due to the world government's lack of promotion, the number of recruits was far less than the Marines. As for Roger, he is still in a coma. Since Atokskis was sealed until now, several months have passed since Sendo drew cards. During this time, Roger has been in a coma. If it weren't for his heartbeat and breathing, they would have thought Roger was dead. Roger suffered too many injuries. He was already injured during the initial battle with Atokskis, continued to force himself into battle with Atokskis, got infected by Atokski's will, and was then forcibly controlled by Mach Vice, overdrawing his physical strength. Combined, these injuries, even with the Shikon Jewel, cannot be recovered in a short time. The Roger pirates were mentally prepared for this, but they didn't expect Roger to remain in a coma for several months. This made them extremely worried. Perhaps, he will sleep like this forever? Moreover, during Roger's coma, they were hiding in the East Blue. The world government is too wary of Roger's current strength, and they know they must take advantage of Roger's severe injuries to eliminate him. Otherwise, it will become an uncontrollable disaster. Fortunately, they have the instant teleportation ability of the Unnamed, which allows them to constantly evade the world government's pursuit. After Sendo drew cards, another month passed. Today, Roger, who has been in a coma, suddenly moved a bit. Rayleigh, who has been observing Roger's condition all the time, was instantly shocked and hurried over, but Roger still had his eyes tightly closed. However, this sudden movement was enough to tighten Rayleigh's heartstrings because Roger had shown no signs of movement before this. Does this mean that Roger is about to recover? However, what he doesn't know is what Roger is experiencing at this moment. As if guided by some unknown force, he seemed to enter a world of nothingness. Here, the white sand stretched as far as the eye could see, and the sky was always dim. No matter how long passed, the sun never appeared in the sky, only a crescent moon hanging in the sky. The surrounding world was a monotonous desert, a white desert, with occasional appearances of a few barren trees. He had been walking for an unknown amount of time in this world. This world had many strange creatures. They wore masks on their faces, had large holes in their chests, and exuded ominous malice and decadence, devouring each other recklessly. Roger fought against them while walking, but they were endless. No matter how long he fought, they would continue to appear. And at this moment, he finally saw a person. A person different from the strange life forms he had encountered before, a person similar to himself, the person he had seen in Arabasta. In the end, when he still had a faint impression, he saw this person appearing from the pyramid, surrounded by cherry blossoms, holding the key to hell, and taking Atokskis away. This is a descendant of the Shinigami? Who are you? Roger asked cautiously. Byakuya Kokaki. Byakuya Kokaki calmly said. After stating his name, he looked at Roger with cold eyes and slowly said. Your life in the present world has already ended, Gold Roger. Chapter 167, Roger Inan, Agents of Death. Life in the present world, has already ended? Roger's body tightened slightly. In other words, was he killed by Atrox? People killed by demons will fall into hell, and their souls cannot be freed. It's like the appearance of those hollows you saw before. They are erased of their hearts within the hollow circle, only able to survive with a chaotic demeanor, carrying sins until their consciousness is completely erased, leaving only the instincts of the body, Byakuya Kokaki explained calmly. Hollows in the hollow circle. Is this the hollow circle? Roger glanced around, then suddenly smiled, so, if I can keep my heart. You do have such an opportunity, Byakuya Kokaki said. Because before you were killed by the demon, there was a key to hell in your body. That's why you can directly come to the hollow circle. Otherwise, you would have come here after turning into a hollow. What opportunity? Roger asked. He knew that Byakuya Kokaki didn't suddenly appear just to witness him turning into a hollow. The hollow circle is a rather special place in hell. I can take you out of hell, Byakuya Kokaki said calmly. But at the same time, you need to become an unknown Shinigami substitute. Shinigami substitute? What's that? Performing the duties of a Shinigami in the living world, purifying demons leaving hell. Byakuya Kokaki produced a white pentagonal medal with a black skull on it. This is the Shinigami substitute license. With it, you can manifest the Shinigami within you. He threw the substitute license to Roger, who quickly caught it. There seemed to be a special power within. How do I use this thing? Roger asked. As for whether he would agree to Byakuya Kokaki's words, it was already quite obvious. Becoming a Shinigami substitute to purify demons seemed like a good job. Although he didn't like being restrained, if it was something he enjoyed doing, it was different. You have been contaminated by Atrox power. Use it to separate the demon in your heart and attempt to create your substitute, Byakuya Kokaki instructed. Following his guidance, Roger attempted to activate the ability of the devil fruit. When the substitute license entered his body, it seemed to resonate with a certain power within him. Suddenly, he felt a pain. His body swelled, and he fell to the ground, using his hands to support himself on the sand. It seemed like his body was splitting apart. In the end, the swollen flesh separated and gradually transformed into a woman. The woman was naked, with short blue hair. At this moment, she was catching her breath with both hands supporting the ground. Roger, standing on the side, exclaimed loudly. "What's going on?" His exclamation caught the attention of the woman who had just split from him. She glanced at Roger and said, "What's with the fuss? I'm you. Don't joke around." Roger stepped back several steps, and he suddenly blushed when he saw the naked woman, realizing there was indeed a special connection between them. It felt like they were the same person. "She is another you, split out by the Shinigami substitute license." Byakuya Kokaki's voice entered their minds at this time. "She represents the part of you belonging to Atrox and has fused with other parts of your strength. She is your Shinigami substitute. Remember, you must not let others know your relationship with her." "How can this be happening?" Roger looked at the woman in astonishment. Then, turning to Byakuya Kokaki, he said, "Hey, don't look over here." Indeed, the woman was his substitute, and Roger could feel this connection. He even had the potential to control her life and death. So, seeing her naked made Roger feel a sense of shame, and he didn't want Byakuya to look here. Thinking about it, he quickly took off his own coat and threw it to her. "Hey, do you have a name?" And the woman took the coat Roger threw, casually draped it over herself, and slowly stood up. Then, she said to Roger, "Originally, you were me, so what's your name?" "Gold Roger." Roger replied. Roger thought about the name and found it quite good. He stood in front of and said to Byakuya Kokaki, "So, just needs to become a Shinigami substitute to purify demons? I don't need to do anything." Byakuya Kokaki glanced at him, and his body gradually turned into cherry blossoms, leaving only the last sentence. "Go find the master's flaw, she is your biggest enemy." After saying this, the world changed again into a vast white desert. "Wait, what exactly is the master?" Roger shouted loudly before Byakuya Kokaki completely disappeared. There was destined to be no one to respond to him. But he knew who the master was. The marshal of the Black Organization, Mach Vice. During the battle with Atrox, the Demon Lord had mentioned these two words. Whether it was the Demon Lord or the descendant of the Shinigami, they seemed to be concerned about the master, who was Mach Vice. Who exactly is she? This is not a question you should be thinking about now. At this moment, and behind Roger spoke, "You are just a pirate, and I am a Shinigami substitute. This is the question I should be thinking about." Roger turned around somewhat awkwardly. Although Anne had put on the coat, it couldn't completely cover her body. Anne was about 5'7" tall, with a great figure. She now had only Roger's coat on her body, not much different from before. Roger quickly said, "It's troublesome. I'll get you some clothes." After saying that, he wanted to take off his clothes, but Anne looked at him strangely and said, "What are you doing? We were originally the same person, are you shy to face yourself?" "That's not the point." Roger still wanted to say something, but Anne spoke again. "If you care so much, then prepare some clothes for me later. Remember not to let others see me." Roger was contemplating Anne's words, but in the next moment, everything spun, and the whole world seemed to distort. The white desert of the hollow circle and the black sky seemed to merge into one. Then, who? Roger suddenly woke up in bed, his eyes widened, and he wanted to sit up, but a severe pain in his body made him grimace, and he couldn't move. "Roger!" Seeing him wake up, Rayleigh next to him instantly became excited. In this house, there were all the crew members of Roger's pirate crew. Chapter 168, Roger and Anne, the clones of the Four Souls Jade. Back to the mortal realm. Roger looked up, his eyes empty. He should have died before. His soul fell into a place in hell called the Hollow Circle, where he saw the Shinigami Byakuya Kokaki and was entrusted by him to become a Shinigami substitute. Then, he split out and, thinking of Anne, he instantly became nervous. Wouldn't she appear now? Or was it just a dream? Just a delusion in his unconscious state? But as his hand touched something in the quilt, his expression changed slightly. He weakly looked at the people around him, listening to them talking about recent events. At the same time, he tightly held the pentagonal badge in his hand. That was the Shinigami substitute license. It really appeared. Did that mean he would use this thing to separate An? It wasn't a dream but a real thing that happened. He did enter the hollow circle and became a Shinigami substitute. Or rather, An, whom he was about to split out, would become a Shinigami substitute. Therefore, Byakuya Kokaki released his soul in the hollow circle, allowing him to return to the mortal realm. Yuan Yizhuo observed Roger through his ability. From the beginning, he found that people who obtained his power would be monitored by him. As they gained more and more of his power, Yuan Yi could even exert some influence on them. Yuan Yi believed that this was not the effect of his card-drawing ability but the power of Mokvai's domination. Yuan Yi also had the power of Mokvai's domination. He believed that he was superior to Roger, and Roger obtained many of his powers, allowing Yuan Yi's influence to be more effective. Although this influence was small, it sometimes had an effect. Like now. Everything Roger experienced before was a dream caused by Yuan Yi using the Yang symbol from a distance, and his ability to split out and was due to the effect of the Shikon Jewel. One of the abilities of the Shikon Jewel was to allow the user to split a part of themselves into a clone. In Inuyasha, the boss used this ability to split many clones to serve as his subordinates. Now, Roger was doing the same. Originally, he had 4 Shikon Jewel fragments in his body, which were not enough to split a clone. However, in the Shinigami substitute license, there were 6 additional Shikon Jewel fragments. With these 10 Shikon Jewel fragments, coupled with Yuan Yi's power of domination over Roger, he could split out a clone. That clone would inherit a strong part of Roger's power, which was An. Actually, Yuan Yi didn't know how Roger's clone would look like, and he didn't expect it to turn out to be a woman. But thinking that Naraku also split out many female clones, he felt relieved. The Shinigami substitute license was teleported into Roger's hands by Yuan Yi through instant movement. Everything was seamlessly arranged by Yuan Yi. Roger would split out and An was almost half constructed by Yuan Yi's power. Therefore, to some extent, Yuan Yi could subtly control An. This was very beneficial to him. Moreover, most importantly, Yuan Yi wanted to use these people to enhance the power of the Shikon Jewel fragments. The Shikon Jewel was the power of the soul. When it fused with the corresponding person, it would naturally merge with their soul. When the fragments were separated, they would also be imbued with the power of their souls. The Shikon Jewel fragments would become stronger, and the ultimately fused Shikon Jewel would be stronger. People like Roger were excellent materials for the fusion of the Shikon Jewel. It could only be said that Roger was a quite qualified tool, and Yuan Yi was very satisfied with him. On Roger's side, some time had passed since he woke up. He said he wanted to be alone for a while, so he walked alone to a remote mountain. Because they had been pursued, the place they were originally in was already remote. And Roger came to a remote corner of that already remote place. In his hands were a few pieces of women crew members' clothes. If they saw him, they might scold him as a pervert. But Roger had no choice. According to the agreement with Byakuya Kokaki, he couldn't reveal An's identity. They could meet, but he couldn't let them know that An was Roger's clone, nor could he let them know that An was a Shinigami substitute. So he could only sneakily steal a few pieces of clothes. That was reasonable. Roger took out the Shinigami substitute license, activated the ability, and integrated the pentagonal metal into his body. The next moment, he thought about what happened in the hollow circle before An split again. Just like before, An appeared. Her eyes were a bit dazed at first, but soon returned to their natural state. "You're really slow," An complained. She took the clothes Roger handed over and put them on. In no time, she turned into a heroic woman. She shook her hair and said, "So, how do you feel now?" "There's no way I can run out right after waking up." Roger shrugged, then said, "Of course, the feeling is not good. How much of my power did you take away?" Power is always conserved, but the 6 Shikon Jewel fragments in the Shinigami substitute license made Roger stronger before the split. At this moment, he felt a bit weaker than when he fought Atrox single-handedly in Jartsburg country, especially in terms of observation haki. He had already developed observation haki to the point of weak point perception, but now he found that this ability had disappeared. But overall, he was still much stronger than his initial self when he fought against Lox in the sea. About the level of a great demon, and also sensed her current power. She did take away a considerable amount of Roger's powerful observation haki, as she needed that power to trace the demons. So, her power now was comparable to Roger's initial state. In the sea, she could definitely be considered a strong presence. I am an, but at the same time, I am Gold Roger, and also a Shinigami substitute. And looked at Roger with her clear childlike eyes and said coldly, so, I don't want Rayleigh and the others to be invaded by the power of the demons. It's best if you don't get involved with demons anymore, it will only accelerate their corruption. Regarding demons, you can call me. Haha, Roger burst into laughter. Do you think this kind of talk can restrain us? Although I also don't want to get involved with demons, if the situation is in front of us, we will never retreat. And looked at Roger's appearance, sighed after a long time, and turned around. I'll leave now. There must be clues about the master in this world, and I will find it. Chapter 169, and joins the navy. And left, but Roger could still sense her through some kind of connection, though the consciousness was not completely shared, they could engage in simple communication. Her main task was still to find clues about domination, which must have some connection to Mach-Vice. Wait, could she be joining the Black Order? Roger suddenly thought of such a possibility. Firstly, the Black Order itself dealt with demons, which aligned with the role of a Shinigami as mentioned by Byakuya Kokaki. The only difference was that the demon hunters of the Black Order killed demons, while Shinigami purified them. He didn't know the distinction between the two, but it should be an internal difference. On the surface, both aimed to kill demons, perhaps killing with Shinigami power was considered purification? Besides dealing with demons, the Black Order could also closely understand Mach-Vice. This perfectly matched what Byakuya Kokaki had told him. Moreover, An was a person who suddenly appeared in this world, with no dark history in her past. Even the world government would never imagine that she and Roger were connected. In that case, could she enter higher ranks, maybe even become an admiral? Roger returned to the gathering place of his companions to prepare for rest. The separation of An made him even weaker. Actually, Roger and Naraku did have some similarities. Naraku was an aggregation of demons and humans, while Roger had the ability to absorb external powers through his fusion fruit. Both of them also had the ability to split into clones. However, their personalities were vastly different. After some time had passed, Roger had mostly recovered. At this moment, he was having a party with his companions on the ship. After his recovery, they no longer needed to hide. They returned to the sea, and this rare voyage naturally called for a celebration. However, at this moment, he suddenly spat out the wine in his mouth. Puff! A large amount of wine sprayed onto Jabba opposite him. Jabba was stunned for a second, then angrily said, "What are you doing?" "Hey! Sorry." Roger seemed to have choked and coughed for a while. He quickly waved his hand, "It's nothing. I suddenly thought of something funny." "Funny?" Jabba calmed down again. He wasn't really angry. They had been companions for who knows how long, how could they be genuinely angry over such a small matter? Nothing. The reason Roger couldn't help it was not because of this party but because of An. He originally thought An would join the Black Order, but she actually went to the Marines. "You want to join the Marines?" Marine Headquarters, Recruitment Office. A Marine colonel sat at the front, looking at the blue-haired woman standing in front of him, surprised. "Are you serious? This is not a regular recruitment office. Only those with the strength of Vice Admiral can join the Marines through this channel." "Exactly." Anne's mouth slightly lifted, standing at the front. She looked at the colonel in the justice coat, softly yet resolutely saying, "I want to become an admiral." Worldwide conscription had been enacted by the world government for some time. Due to the achievements of the Marines, a large number of talents joined the Marines. Unfortunately, the third admiral position had not been filled yet. Because the world government had allocated an additional admiral position to the Marines this time to cope with the upcoming conflicts. In other words, the Marines now had a structure of 3 admirals with Zephyr and Aokiji as 2 of them. The third admiral position had been waiting for someone capable to join. Knowing this, Anne decided to join the Marines. Through this global conscription, she should quickly become an admiral, much better than slowly climbing up in the Black Order. Moreover, there might be some connection between Mach-Vice and domination. Anne felt that being under Mach-Vice's command might not lead to anything good, and Mach-Vice was a rather mysterious and formidable woman. It might be better to approach her indirectly through the Marines. Become an admiral. The colonel was surprised. He looked at a youthful and energetic girl, wearing a relatively cool blouse on the upper body and shorts on the lower body, revealing a pair of long legs. How could such a girl choose to join the Marines? Moreover, she even said she wanted to become an admiral. Young lady, the position of Marine Admiral is not something that anyone can. He was about to say something, but suddenly Anne's figure disappeared. The next moment, a short blade was held against his neck. The colonel stared blankly at this scene. He completely didn't see how Anne moved. Is it enough now? Anne retracted the short blade, a weapon she casually picked. It wasn't very handy to use, but it would do. With the resources of the Marines, she could easily find a good knife later. Enough. The colonel looked at Anne without saying a word. At this moment, a man with a severed arm appeared on the side. He laughed loudly. Such fast movements at such a young age are truly admirable. Ca. Captain Carp. The colonel immediately saluted. In the current Marines, Carp had been regarded as a godlike figure due to the propaganda of defeating Atoks. And although Aokiji and Heron were also part of the propaganda, Aokiji's qualifications were too shallow, and Heron's strength was indeed not as good as Carp's, so Carp became the main figurehead. And looked at Carp, her expression unchanged. Now she was not Roger anymore. She didn't need to hide from Carp, instead, she could openly appear in front of Carp. Thinking about this, she had a strange feeling in her heart. If she became a Marine Admiral in the future, should she use Roger to boost her achievements? Maybe in the future, she could become an admiral and even use her record to become Fleet Admiral. Thinking about this, she felt a little excited. In fact, she acted just now because she sensed that Carp happened to be nearby. And seemingly asked the Marine Colonel about her strength, but she was actually asking Carp. So, Carp said, "Enough. Do well." Carp patted the Colonel on the shoulder. The Colonel, who had been saluting, suddenly blushed and looked terrified. He spoke to Anne, "If you want to be an admiral, come with me." Chapter 170, Anne vs. Zifa, Predicting the Future. Carp often casually walked around the Marine headquarters, enjoying the scenery and relaxing his mind. After the battle with Atoks, he sensed the influence of Atok's demonic power on himself. Although the infection was not severe, Heron insisted that he should not go out for a short period. Every once in a while, Heron would purify him, which became a bit annoying for Carp. However, there weren't many major pirates at sea now, and people had not yet shaken off the shadow of Atoks. So, there was no urgent need to go out to sea. But as he walked around, he sensed the presence of Anne. He knew that Anne was a formidable person from her recent actions. "What's your name?" Carp asked. Anne replied concisely. With her full name being Gold. Anne, wouldn't that directly reveal her relationship with Roger? "Why do you want to become a Marine Admiral?" As they walked, Carp asked, "Pirates disrupt the order of the sea. I've been getting stronger all the way to eliminate them." Anne said without any change in expression, "Originally, I thought the Marines were just a bunch of good-looking guys, but you defeating Rox and Atoks changed my view." At first, she spoke lies without blushing, but later her words became somewhat harsh. Didn't she know that others might not be aware of the truth? Rox's defeat was mainly due to him, and the defeat of Atoks was 40% Mokvai's credit and 40% his own. The others contributed at most 20%, right? But now, these achievements were all stolen, and while Roger didn't mind, it didn't stop Anne from using these words to mock them. Sure enough, after hearing Anne's words, Carp chuckled, seeming to avoid discussing this topic. The world government could shamelessly report these things, but Carp was not that shameless. But he certainly didn't know that Anne was mocking him. After all, only a few people knew about this matter. He could never know that Anne was Roger, the person he had chased for a long time before. In fact, it was a bit emotional that the two enemies at sea were now casually chatting like this. Carp was not very suspicious of Anne's initial words. After all, pirates in this world were indeed disruptors of order, and the Marines hadn't done much before. It was entirely normal for Anne to hate pirates while not caring much about the Marines, especially considering the recent propaganda that made people re-evaluate the Marine organization. What Anne said was just a very common reason. "How did you end up here, Carp?" They chatted casually for a while, and when they walked to a place similar to a training ground, the voice of another man came from ahead. Anne narrowed her eyes, she knew that man. It was Zephyr. They were old rivals. However, they were Roger's old rivals. Anne quickly regained her composure, and Carp said, "This is Anne, here to apply for the position of Marine Admiral. I brought her over." Actually, both he and Zephyr were somewhat dissatisfied with the world government's actions. In the case of the world draft, they could directly designate the highest rank as Vice Admiral. The position of Admiral was so important, the world government couldn't possibly allow wandering individuals to join so easily. Even if they had a clean background and qualified beliefs, they should train at the Vice Admiral level for some time. However, the world government's decision was something the Marines couldn't change. After all, directly becoming an admiral and directly becoming a vice admiral had vastly different attractions for people. Vice admirals were abundant in the Marines, but there were only a few admirals. If there were only vice admirals, many people probably wouldn't join, right? Do you want to become a Marine admiral? Zephyr, in the training ground, looked at Anne. And nodded, "Of course, that's why I came." "Is that so?" Zephyr glanced at Carp, and Carp said, "You can start, I'll watch from the side." "Start what?" "Of course, it's starting a fight. Just defeating a colonel wasn't enough. If she wanted to become a Marine Admiral, she should at least fight against a Marine Admiral, right? According to the world government's regulations, as long as she could have an intense battle with Zephyr, she could become a candidate admiral. After the world draft, they would determine if she could be promoted to a real admiral. Originally, it wasn't necessary to come directly to Zephyr after passing the colonel level, but Carp had high expectations for Anne. He felt that Anne seemed to possess a special power, something he found familiar. Carp felt that he had seen Anne somewhere before seeing her. Unfortunately, even after thinking about it for a long time, he couldn't recall. So, he exceptionally brought Anne directly to Zephyr, but of course, the necessary political review couldn't be omitted. He walked to the side of the training ground, sat down, and carefully observed the two. Not knowing when he had seen Anne before, he observed her strength carefully now. And looked at Zephyr, not feeling nervous. When she was still a part of Roger, she had fought Zephyr several times. She knew his strength inside out. She pulled out the short blade again, haki covering it. She didn't use Conqueror's haki because it was somewhat sensitive within the Marines. At this stage, it was better not to use it. Moreover, just using armament haki was enough. Zephyr, seeing the level of haki from Anne, also became serious. Truly, Anne was brought here directly by Carp, and he also covered himself with armament haki. The next moment, Anne's figure disappeared. Such fast speed! Zephyr turned around, a punch covered with armament haki thrown, but Anne easily dodged it. She dodged his punch even before he threw it. Then, she easily slashed at Zephyr's side covered with armament haki. Zephyr was pushed back by this slash. He frowned because he sensed that Anne's movements before dodging his punch were not normal. She had started dodging before he even threw the punch. Observation haki that sees into the future. Carp, on the sidelines, had a clearer view. He looked at Anne in amazement. Observation haki could develop incredible abilities when reaching a high level. Seeing into the future was one of them, and having someone in this world who mastered observation haki to such an extent was undoubtedly rare. And having this level of observation haki meant that she was qualified to become a candidate admiral. Especially with Anne's speed and strength, she had the ability to engage in a battle with Zephyr. And even gain the upper hand. Chapter 171, The Navy Recruits. Roger's Conqueror's haki was already formidable, and it received comprehensive enhancement after strengthening in the Jartsburg country. Especially when not using devil fruit powers, Roger's observation haki reached its peak. Subsequently, during more than half a year of training and battles in Alabasta, Roger's observation haki experienced another breakthrough, reaching the level of foreseeing the future. Moreover, Anne inherited Roger's observation haki, including the ability to perceive weaknesses. However, when Roger comprehended it, it was already quite challenging, so it wasn't as overwhelming when it transferred to her. But she was still quite skilled in foreseeing the future. In Anne's eyes, the trajectory of Zephyr's next attack had already been observed. She easily evaded it, and her tempered blade danced as if in a waltz, finally ending up at Zephyr's neck. Ding! The sharp blade clashed with Zephyr's armament haki hardening. Although Anne's observation haki had reached the top level, her armament haki was also powerful. However, her style focused more on agility, so the first attack couldn't break through. She immediately retracted her strength, preparing for the next assault. Karp observed all this with a calm expression. If he had any suspicions at the beginning about Anne being a spy for other forces, he had now discarded those thoughts. With Anne's strength, becoming an admiral was more than achievable. Even in the vast seas, she would be among the top-tier fighters. What organization would send such a powerful individual as an undercover agent? He continued watching, realizing that Anne not only possessed strength but also had rich combat experience. She skillfully used her speed and foresight to engage Zephyr continuously, gradually suppressing him. The figures of the two constantly changed on the square, and the clash of their armament haki was impressive. As the battle intensified, Zephyr suddenly stepped back from the battlefield. His marine uniform was tattered, and there were several blade marks on his body. "All right." As he spoke, Anne also stopped. Zephyr expressed satisfaction. "Impressive. To reach this level at your age, I fully acknowledge you." Anne smiled and sheathed her short blade. She walked over lightly. "Does this mean I've passed?" "Yes, currently, you're the only qualified one. But to become a Marine Admiral, you need to wait until the world draft is over. Right now, you're only a candidate admiral," Zephyr said admiringly. In fact, with Anne's strength, there was no one who could compete with her for the admiral position. Zephyr didn't think there would be anyone stronger than Anne among the upcoming applicants. However, regulations were regulations, and he had to abide by them. Also, it would take some time to investigate Anne's background. Although it was unlikely that any organization would send someone like her to infiltrate the Marines, it was still a potential concern if she harbored ill intentions. Of course, it was just a concern for him. The world government's requirement was that even a ruffian showing admiral-level strength could become an admiral. Now, the record of the youngest Marine Admiral will be broken. Karp walked over with a teasing smile, looking at Zephyr. Titles and records don't mean much. Zephyr didn't care much. But when he mentioned it, he asked Anne, "By the way, how old are you now?" Anne was startled. How old was she now? Well, strictly speaking, she wasn't even a year old, but that was too young, it wouldn't work. Using Roger's age would make her 42, which was too old, that wouldn't work either. 21. Anne hesitated for a moment and said slowly. It's better to average it out, considering she was 0 years old and 42 years old. Exactly 21, a good age. Zephyr and Karp looked at each other. Why did it feel like Anne was hesitating? Although a girl's age is a secret, we are an official organization, so we need the real age. Zephyr said seriously. He thought and deliberately understated her age. Anne quickly explained, because I've always been alone, I don't have a clear concept of age. Just now, I thought about it and calculated to find out my age. Ah. What ah? Looking at Zephyr and Karp, who still seemed somewhat distrustful, Anne tutted. All right, where do I go now? I'll take you to the new recruits base for this world draft. Since you want to become a Marine Admiral, you can't lack prestige. Spend this time getting along well with them. Chapter 172, Doflamingo. Anne actually understood the most important reason why Zephyr brought her here. That was, if she became a Marine Admiral, she needed prestige. However, gaining recognition from the veteran soldiers in a short time was a bit difficult. So, it would be better to gain prestige directly from the batch of newcomers who came with her. After all, they would all become an essential part of the Marines in the future, and many talented individuals among them would become the backbone of the Marines. Since Sakajiki and Barusalino were specifically singled out, it was likely that they would also have a significant position in the future Marines. Sakajiki and Barusalino, later known as Akainu and Kizaru, had become contemporaries in this timeline and joined the Marines a few years earlier. Taking advantage of the world government's world draft, Sakajiki and Barusalino had joined the Marines. They had already displayed their monstrous talents early on, even though they couldn't compare to someone like Anne, who was born at the level of a Yonko. Even if Anne used the age she had fabricated earlier, she would be about the same age as Akainu and Kizaru. Akainu was a few years younger than her, and Kizaru was about the same age. Now, Anne was going to be their immediate superior. As Anne expected, Zephyr said to the Rear Admiral, when your main duty returns to the Marines, change from head coach to assistant coach. The Rear Admiral was puzzled. Does that mean Admiral Zephyr, you're going to personally train her? I don't have time for that right now. Zephyr sighed and patted Anne's shoulder. Next, this training camp will be under her. She's both the head coach and a trainee. You should understand what I mean, right? The Rear Admiral glanced at An, somewhat skeptical. How could he not understand Zephyr's intention? It meant that this woman was also a newcomer, but she was much stronger than the Rear Admiral himself. He couldn't teach her anything. But was it possible? How old was she? An smiled. No problem. This is a novel experience for me. Teaching newcomers was fine, but coaching soldiers was quite novel. My name is An. I look forward to working with you. She friendly greeted the Rear Admiral, who nodded and said solemnly, since it's what Admiral Zephyr said, I have no objections. I hope we can cooperate well in the future. I have no experience in teaching. Can I observe for a few days first? Of course. Watching the two talk, Zephyr clapped his hands. Good, it seems you two have discussed it. So, I'll leave this training camp to both of you. Leave it to me. In her mind, An was already thinking about leading a fleet of Marines to pursue Roger and gain achievements. Seeing her confident expression, Zephyr left with peace of mind. He still needed to inform Admiral Sora about this matter because Carp definitely wouldn't report it. Besides, they needed to investigate Anne's past. With these thoughts, he left the training camp, leaving An to deal with the new recruits. And this dealing took a whole year. Zephyr reported the situation about An to Admiral Sora. Sora was pleased to have such a promising recruit join the Marines. Subsequently, he reported to the 5 elders, who were also eager to see the Marines strengthen and balance the power with the Black Sect and pirates. Therefore, they had no objections to An becoming a Marine Admiral, and they even publicized it widely. After all, having a newcomer directly become an admiral was a major event. It signified that the Marines were in desperate need of talents. What were the strong individuals outside waiting for? While An was disciplining the Marine recruits, the situation on the high seas was changing. Firstly, Roger's pirate crew made a high-profile comeback and, after defeating several Marine sieges, the Marines' actions against them disappeared. Taking advantage of Roger's injuries was an opportunity to annihilate them, but now that Roger had recovered, further targeting them made no sense for the Marines. Although Aokiji was sealed, news about devil fruits increased, especially in the weaker seas where devil fruits were emerging one after another. For this reason, Mokvai applied to establish branches in the 4 seas. Still, the 5 elders had not yet agreed. So today, Mokvai was coming in person. Of course, her dealings with the world government were purely for mutual benefit. Establishing a Black Sect branch in the 4 seas would significantly enhance the influence of the Black Sect, and the cost. Of course, there would be some costs. The answer was the super soldier serum. During this year, Vegapunk had successfully analyzed and replicated these substances. Mokvai tried it herself, and the substance could enhance some people's cell activity, develop the brain, and purify the spirit. In simpler terms, it could make the evil more evil, like Red Skull in Captain America. It could also make the good more responsible, like Captain America. However, the influence was minimal unless it was injected into very weak individuals. The stronger someone was, the less impact it had. Now, Mokvai was bringing these reagents to Mary Giose. And this time, she encountered something she hadn't seen in the previous visits. Mokvai's lips curled up slightly as she continued to walk forward. In front were celestial dragons. She hadn't seen those bubble-blowing celestial dragons in the previous visits. She had only seen celestial dragons like the 5 elders. It seemed that the more she came, the more she would see. And now, she finally encountered the rumored arrogant celestial dragons. Moreover, it was a child. The child had golden hair and cool glasses, surrounded by guards moving forward. Below him was a crawling slave. Doflamingo. Mokvai smiled and continued to walk forward. Chapter 173, Bad Kids Get Eaten. Hey, stop right there. Mokvai continued walking, and Doflamingo ahead was displeased. As a celestial dragon, he had been perfectly influenced by the environment. In his perception, he was a god with the highest status, and commoners from the lower world should show him the utmost respect. He possessed the power of life and death and had slaves to kill anyone he disliked. Now, he saw a woman walking boldly, not even showing any gestures of goodwill towards him. For a moment, he was somewhat doubtful, but they were about to pass each other, and the woman still didn't salute him. In an instant, anger surged within Doflamingo, and he angrily exclaimed, "Why don't you kneel when you see the great me?" The woman was beautiful, but no matter how beautiful she was just a slave, not a celestial dragon. Mokvai stopped walking. She turned her head and looked at Doflamingo beside her. Upon his shout, his guards had already moved, even earlier than his angry yell because they were celestial dragon's guards. They pointed their swords at Mokvai, but she remained unfazed, just looking at Doflamingo. Doflamingo, for the first time, saw a commoner daring to look directly at him. He was about to say something, but then he saw Mokvai's eyes. Like tree rings, looking at them was like being immersed in something. Through the glasses, he could see more clearly, and those eyes seemed to want to devour him. He was stunned. "Noble celestial dragon, may I ask if there is something that requires me to stop?" Although she said noble celestial dragon, there was no respect in her tone, making the surrounding guards almost terrified. They wanted to kill Mokvai, but they couldn't move. It was as if something was suppressing their bodies, rendering them immobile. Their eyes became frightened, unable to speak, maintaining their postures, seemingly fierce but surrounding Mokvai in the center. "What are you doing? Hurry up and kill this disrespectful woman." Doflamingo, at this moment, suddenly felt a sense of fear he had never experienced before. He looked at Mokvai, looked into her eyes, as if falling into a vortex. Why weren't his loyal slaves moving? Why did this woman dare to look at him with such eyes? Didn't she know what disrespect to celestial dragons would lead to? And why couldn't he move? He couldn't even tremble or speak. Mokvai didn't say anything either. She just looked at Doflamingo, unfazed by the swords around her. She calmly folded her hands behind her back, a strange smile appearing on her face. A half smile, not the eerie one before, but a normal smile. Dofu. Fear accumulated deeper in Doflamingo's heart. What was happening? However, at this moment, a mature man's voice came from a distance, breaking all the fear. "Father." Doflamingo realized he could move again. He turned his head and saw his father coming. Homing Gu Sheng, Mokvai also saw someone arriving and softly called out his name. Yes, it was Dongquick Sodi Homing, Doflamingo's father. As one of the few celestial dragons who didn't like to keep slaves, he walked over without any guards. "Ah, Admiral Mokvai." Seeing the situation, Homing Gu Sheng knew it must be something Doflamingo caused. He quickly reprimanded the guards. "What are you doing? Step back." Although a celestial dragon who didn't like to abuse power, Homing Gu Sheng was still a celestial dragon, and he had more authority than Doflamingo. The guards quickly stepped back. "Sorry, it's Doflamingo causing you trouble." As a celestial dragon, Homing Gu Sheng surprisingly apologized to a human from the lower world. If other celestial dragons saw this, they would condemn him as fallen. But Mokvai accepted his apology calmly. Mokvai smiled, not the eerie smile from before, but a genuine one. "No problem. I just wanted to discuss some matters with the 5 elders." Mokvai glanced at Doflamingo and said casually, "Seems like I won't trouble you here. I'll be on my way." "I see, then we won't bother you here. I'll make sure to discipline Doflamingo properly." Homing Gu Sheng also didn't want to deal with Mokvai. In Marie Joyce, all outstanding celestial dragons knew that getting involved with Mokvai had a strange connection with the 5 elders' plans. If you didn't want to participate in the 5 elders' plans, it was better not to have any relationship with Mokvai. He took Doflamingo away. Doflamingo, who had not spoken since Mokvai arrived, did not say a word until they left. And only when they were almost at the end of the street did he finally turn his head, wanting to take one last look at Mokvai's figure, wanting to etch her image into his heart forever. Today, Mokvai left a huge psychological shadow and shame on him, and he was determined to get it back in the future. However, when he turned his head to look at Mokvai, she was also looking at him. Moreover, when he turned his head, he could see Mokvai opening her mouth to say something. Although he couldn't hear the voice, Doflamingo seemed to know what Mokvai was saying. "Bad child, you will be eaten by the D. This was a terrifying story passed down among celestial dragons, a sentence specially used to educate their children. Bad children would be eaten by the D. And now, Mokvai said this to Doflamingo. In an instant, he seemed to see Mokvai turning into a giant demon, the demon opening its mouth, ready to devour him in the next moment. Everything around, all the buildings, seemed to be distorted monsters and demons staring at him. Even the slaves beneath him turned into monsters roaring at him. Doflamingo originally wanted to say something, but at this moment, he was trembling all over. It was as if the accumulated fear had erupted at this moment. He shivered and turned his body back. Tofu, what's wrong? Homing noticed Doflamingo's abnormality and couldn't help but ask. Ah! However, in Doflamingo's eyes, his father had also turned into such a demon. He was roaring towards him, opening a blood basin to devour him. But in the next moment, all this disappeared, and everything returned to normal. Nothing. Nothing at all. Doflamingo breathed quickly. He looked forward, towards the direction opposite to Mokvice, and dared not turn back again. Chapter 174, Supply of Super Soldier Serum. Mokvice smiled as Doflamingo quickly left. Playing with children is quite enjoyable, especially children like Doflamingo. She wondered how he would think about today's events in the future. But it didn't matter, in any case, they wouldn't be celestial dragons after some time. Thinking about this, Mokvice couldn't help but have some mischievous thoughts. Should she play with Doflamingo again at that time? After all, he could be considered a side quest, and it would contribute to her emotional values. With these mischievous thoughts in mind, Mokvice had already entered Pangar Castle. On the way, she didn't encounter any celestial dragons again and smoothly reached the location of the 5 elders. Amidst the power struggles, the 5 elders were inside as usual. Mokvice gently pushed open the door and walked in. To have you personally come, it seems there's progress in the research on Punk Hazard. One of the 5 elders put down the documents and looked at Mokvice, saying calmly. Of course. Mokvice pulled over a chair, sat down, and crossed her legs. She took out a vial from her pocket, looking at the sparkling liquid, and informed the 5 elders of its effects. The serum was still referred to as the Super Soldier Serum. Although its effects on top-tier fighters were average, it could still be effective, especially as a means of enhancement for those in the lower ranks. If this serum could be widely distributed, the overall strength of the Marines should rise to another level. Most importantly, it could purify the mind, reducing the impact of demonic temptations on individuals. This was the ability the 5 elders valued the most. With this ability, they could better utilize the power of demons. Besides, in the previous battle with Aokiji, Kizaru, and others, the Marines like Cap, had been contaminated by demonic power. With this serum, they should be able to recover significantly. However, to develop the Super Soldier Serum, we need demon's blood, Mokvice said. So, I hope the world government will agree to my application to establish branches in the 4 seas. Currently, most demons are showing up in the weaker military forces in the 4 seas, and the Marines are not skilled at dealing with them. Demon's blood for the Super Soldier Serum? That was definitely not true. Mokvice knew it was not true, the 5 elders knew it was not true, and Mokvice knew that the 5 elders knew it was not true. However, it didn't matter. Because this was just a business deal. Mokvice's simple proposition was, allow and support the Blackbeard pirates to establish branches in the 4 seas, and she would supply the world government with the Super Soldier Serum. The 5 elders knew that the Super Soldier Serum was created by Vegapunk, but it was also under Mokvice's help that it was duplicated. Mokvice's implication was straightforward without the samples she provided. Even if Vegapunk had already analyzed the composition of the Super Soldier Serum, he wouldn't be able to replicate it. The 5 elders fell into a brief contemplation. It seemed like a good deal because whether they got the Super Soldier Serum or established Blackbeard pirates' branches in the 4 seas, both enhanced the means of the world government. However, they were also wary of the Blackbeard pirates growing too much and cautiously guarded against the spread of their influence. Currently, the Blackbeard pirates' influence only radiated in a part of the New World. If branches were established in the 4 seas, their influence would spread too much. However, the Super Soldier Serum was essential. With it, they would have more confidence in dealing with demons. Agreed. After some thought, they decided that the Super Soldier Serum was more important. They agreed to Mokvice's conditions. Mokvice smiled. I heard the Great Draft is about to end. She asked a question unrelated to the Blackbeard pirates. A talented seedling has come to the Marines, called Anne, one of the 5 elders said. She is now the 3rd Admiral of the Marines. You must have heard of her. Of course, she had heard of her. Anne's appearance could be said to be the biggest news in the world at the moment. After a period of calm, a person suddenly rose to become a prominent Marine Admiral during the Great Draft. Moreover, a young woman? This was simply making them think the world had gone mad. The rookie training period had already ended, and Anne had successfully taken up the position of admiral and set sail 3 times, defeating pirates with bounties in the billions each time. After these 3 times, no one doubted her strength anymore. Heard about it, and I was thinking of paying a visit to Marineford, Mokvai said softly. Oh? What are you going to do? One of the 5 elders asked. The timing of Anne's appearance is quite coincidental, and her strength is too formidable. Mokvai looked at the 5 elders and said softly, could it be some kind of coincidence? What do you mean? One of the 5 elders frowned. Although it's a bit presumptuous, I want to confirm whether Anne is a demon or not, Mokvai said directly. Although most demons don't hide their identity and appear directly, a small number of clever demons make contracts with humans in some way, using humans to help them accomplish certain things. These people are called devil men, similar to Bartholomew Kuma, but more gentle. Speaking of Kuma, the 5 elders suddenly realized. Kuma was still being held on Punk Hazard. Anne might be a demon, or she might be a devil man, of course, more likely, she's just a human. I hope she's human, but I still want to confirm. This was indeed presumptuous. Although Mokvai was an admiral, she was the admiral of the Blackbeard pirates. She didn't have the right to intervene in how the Marines handled things. But since she was the admiral of the Blackbeard pirates, she had the right to investigate demons. The 5 elders thought about it and felt that what Mokvai said made some sense. Anne's appearance was indeed sudden, and they hadn't investigated Anne's past. But if that was the case, there was another person who was similar to Anne. The 5 elders glanced at Mokvai, and if they were to say, what was the difference between her and Anne? Both appeared suddenly, both took advantage of the situation to join the world government, and both gained high positions. Mokvai was a smart person. She was so clear and straightforward in stating her identity because she was confident and not afraid of the world government investigating her. But it was true, they had been investigating Mokvai's clues all along, and they hadn't obtained any useful information. All right, you can investigate Anne, but it's inappropriate to investigate a Marine admiral no matter what. Another elder said, however, the super soldier serum produced on Punk Hazard should be supplied to the Marines first. Of course. Mokvai responded with a smile. Chapter 175, Makama Inan. Is Mokvai here? Inside the Marine headquarters, Anne, who had just returned from a mission, heard Starjun's words. At the port, Starjun seemed to be going on a mission as well. While Starjun hadn't boarded the ship yet, Anne quickly asked, why is she here? Starjun, wearing the Marine's justice coat, shrugged. Seems like she came to deliver something called the Super Soldier Serum. She's currently discussing it in the Fleet Admiral's office. Super Soldier Serum? Although Anne hadn't seen it, she could tell from the name what it was. A serum for creating super soldiers? The world government was indeed becoming more powerful, but Anne wondered if there was anything Mokvai had done to the Super Soldier Serum. Since the encounter with Coyote Starkey, no, even before that, Mokvai's actions in Alabasta had already made Roger somewhat suspicious of her. After hearing Starkey's words, he felt even more that Mokvai was not just a simple admiral of the Blackbeard pirates. Dominance. According to Aokiji and Coyote Starkey, she was related to Dominance. And it seemed like she had a sister too? Now, her sudden arrival allowed Anne to take a good look at this mysterious woman. Although Roger had met Mokvai before, the meetings were too brief, and there was no time to probe anything. Now she wanted to use her haki, especially the color of observation haki Roger granted her, which had reached the level of weakness perception. This meant she could see the weaknesses in others' abilities. Regardless of how powerful someone was or their attacks, they always had weaknesses. By targeting these weaknesses, she could easily break through an opponent's defenses. Besides, she could also analyze a person with her color of observation haki, something she seemed to have gained after battling Aokiji. This ability allowed her to determine if a person possessed devil fruit powers. She wanted to see what kind of person Mokvai really was. With these thoughts in mind, Anne casually exchanged a few words with Starjun, then quickly headed towards the Fleet Admiral's office. Advancing into the depths of the Marine headquarters, Anne didn't reveal her eagerness. Mokvai was a woman of mystery and depth, and acting too unusually might make her suspect something. Anne. As she was about to enter the headquarters meeting room, a woman was standing at the entrance. Anne stopped, squinting her eyes as she looked at the woman in front of her. Mokvai. Was she specifically waiting for her here? Admiral Mokvai. Anne pretended to be somewhat puzzled, as if she had never seen Mokvice before. That's right. Mokvice, as if just coming out from inside, looked at Anne and said, didn't expect that even the recently famous figure on the high seas knows about me. She wasn't being humble, but genuinely low-key. Over the years, as the admiral of the Blackbeard pirates, Mokvice rarely appeared in the public eye. The few times she did intervene were known only to Roger and the 5 elders. Living in seclusion made her information seem more mysterious. Except for the initial portrait of Mokvice when she took office, all information about her was sealed. Not even the Marines, let alone many members of the Blackbeard pirates, had seen her. Anne smiled and said to Mokvice, actually, before joining the Marines, I did consider joining the Blackbeard pirates. But after the Marines successfully defeated Aokiji, I thought it would be better to join the Marines. It was a normal thought. After seeing the news that the Marines had defeated a monster like Aokiji, anyone would think that the Marines were the most powerful organization in the world. And the most worthwhile organization to join. Because at that time, the Marines were conducting a massive draft, and joining the Marines was undoubtedly more profitable than joining the Blackbeard pirates. While talking, Anne had already begun to use her color of observation haki. But her heart sank because she found that when facing Mokvice, her internal color of observation haki couldn't be used. What's going on? Anne was greatly surprised, she had never encountered such a thing before. It was as if something was blocking her color of observation haki from being released. What's wrong? The shock in her heart seemed to show on her face, and Mokvice noticed something was off, asking, nothing. Anne quickly gathered her composure, shaking her head, maybe I got injured a bit earlier. She hurriedly explained, I saw Roger when I went out to sea just now. It made sense to bring up Roger because being injured when facing Roger was entirely reasonable. The Roger she faced now was no longer the same as the one from before. Well, even though splitting into Anne, Roger's combat power was comparable to a somewhat weakened Aokiji. At that time, he should be more powerful than Mokvice. As for other times, it was hard to say. In the future, if she wanted to investigate Mokvice, she would have to be more cautious. Thinking this, Anne quickly walked towards the Fleet Admiral's office. Mainly, she wanted to ask why Mokvice had come, and what this super soldier serum was all about.